Let's begin the Conservation Commission meeting for October 5th, 2016. We are recording, and if anybody is recording, please let us know. And if you could also silence your cell phones, that would be appreciated. Oh, okay. So first off, public meeting. Does anybody have any comments for items not on the agenda tonight? No, seeing not, let's continue on to the public hearing notices of intent. Let's see, for continuances, we have one continuance, and that's Edwin Snyder Art Revocable Trust, 1 Brox Court, continued until 10/19. So, the second one will be Larson, 316 Pulpus Road. LaRusso. Oh, I didn't put my glasses on. LaRusso.
First of all, I just want to let you know I am going to ask for a continuance on this, but I wanted to go over a couple of things. I'm dealing with a natural heritage on this application, as we talked about last time, and we need to come up with a management plan and a preservation plan. And I just wanted to talk to you to make sure that it was something that you would entertain. A couple of things that I brought up. This is again 316 Pulpus Road. It's moving the existing house, constructing a new house with a pool and a septic system. There's an area of sensitive vegetation along the northwestern side of the property. There is a new plan, which I think I need to give you a copy. I did email it. It shows another small area of this sensitive vegetation over here. In my dealings with natural heritage, they would like to see it more of a buffer off of the sensitive vegetation, and a management plan put together on how to maintain it. Right now, it's been mowed for 30 years every 2 weeks, and
it's still there.
Still beautiful.
Is it St. Andrew's Cross? Yeah, kind of like. Yeah, it likes being mowed.
Well, you got to talk to. We're trying to work that out with natural heritage.
Yeah, there's some frequency that's better than others, probably.
And a height. If you go over a height, that I can recommend to probably entertain that. So I'm trying to work that through. Another thing that I've also suggested, and Ernie, you might have input on this, or you might all have input on this, is to clear. There's a shrub, maritime shrubland over here that I'm suggesting that we maybe take this over like 10 feet off of the property line, do the hedge along the property line, but create this as a meadow in there and go in and cut it all down. And my experience has been a lot of times with St. Andrew's Cross, if the vegetation comes up, it goes dormant, and then when you take the vegetation out, it comes back. That's probably what happened here. But I'm talking to Natural Heritage about doing something like that over here. And do you think that's a viable?
That's a good question, because you lose the habitat value of the shrubs, but it's just typical, kind of bayberry, cherry,
But I'm going to talk to them about doing that. The other thing is this area that is of concern to you, between the proposed pool up in here. This is lawn mowed all the way down to inside of the 25, and they don't. The applicant doesn't mind just maintaining that, whatever. It doesn't want it as a lawn. But I was going to suggest that we maintain the area, including the area inside of 25, the way we're maintaining the rest of it, and see if the St. Andrew's Cross would migrate across that. Just leave this natural line. We're basically going to mow that a couple, less often, and no fertilizer, no irrigation in that area. Definitely between 25 and 50. But if the commission is amenable to it, then to be able to go inside of the 25 and treat that as basically maintain it as a meadow in that area, and try to encourage the sensitive vegetation to come over into that area. Is that something you would entertain? I'm not going to put it on the table if you would.
You know what the grasses are that are in there now, or?
They're pretty. I'm not a grass person, and they're all mowed. So even if I could key them out, they're sort of native fescues or.
Yeah, I mean, feeling is, I'd like to see, I guess, what Heritage has to say a little bit, but to start mowing and maintaining further into the wetland.
No, I'm talking just this area that's currently lawn.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna maintain a buffer around the edge of the sensitive plants,
Right.
and not no fertilizer, just maintain it as the existing grasses that are there that are not, it's not much of a lawn. I mean, you've seen, it's really very basic. I mean, it's.
Right, which is what
Right.
gives habitat for pollinators and all those things that
Right,
we
and so what I was thinking is I'm gonna maintain this area that way. If we can just maintain it down, it's inside of the 25. This is currently maintained as lawn in here. This is all, we'd also like to continue to maintain this area, which is sensitive plants, inside of the 25. We do wanna continue to maintain that, so I will be asking, we don't wanna let the shrubs go up.
Yeah,
And we're working on a management plan for that, but, so I guess I do need a waiver. I need to ask for a waiver to continue to maintain that as it is.
So this is the area of concern, this is also unique for us.
Yeah, I'm not supposed to be saying that.
well,
Yeah, but
we know
this-
where you're at, though.
Yeah, no,
This is-
the 50.
This is the 50, that's the 25. And so there's a small area inside of here that's within 25, and this is just lawn inside of 25. They don't want to maintain it really as a lawn, but just as a meadow, a different, to keep it from running in this woody vegetation and.
So
maybe-
not like mow it every week, but more
So
like
is it-
just large plant.
Yeah, and is it
development.
woody vegetation
It-
in the wetland?
Yeah, it's shrubby, it's shrubs, this is a shrub swamp, and this is shrubs all the way up to here.
Okay.
And then there's your shrubs here, we're talking about maybe making more of a meadow over in this area as mitigation, and to encourage a larger area for potential, for the plants to migrate into. But this would just be, it wouldn't be mowed very,
I would probably say, see what Natural Heritage says, but I would hold the
Mhm.
25 line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
I
kind of
agree.
opinion on it. I would hold the 25 line as a no disturb. And see which, if they say, well, this particular plant community
it
kind of
would die out.
supersedes that wetland boundary, is that, I mean, what's going to be more important than Natural Heritage? Let's find out.
Okay.
Yeah, Heritage may come back and say, I would imagine they've probably got some kind of a pretty reliable management plan for that species by now, and they don't. You know who does is probably the foundation, because they have so much of it up at Squam.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to contact them, and talk to them.
I asked Jen Carberg if she could, kind of come up with something, and
You did?
yeah, and she kind of was like, well, I don't know exactly what they do. They just
They just do what
mow
they've
the
always
sides of the
done.
trails, but
I mean, it just seems sort of a hopeful reasoning that if we were to clear out this area in hopes that this will migrate that way, maybe it would, maybe it won't, but
Well,
Um,
it's already clear.
it's already clear.
I'm
so-
not talking about clearing anything new.
Right.
I'm just maintaining it at that line.
So if it's already clear, why hasn't it already colonized?
Yeah.
It might not.
Yeah, I guess I get nervous about increasing disturbance into the shrubs when we're doing so much home construction, 'cause I think it opens up an avenue for invasives
Right.
more so than maybe the species we're looking for, especially depending on who the we entity is that's doing the maintenance. If they're taking their mowers from some other job and they're contaminated, then we're not going to be off to a really good start.
But, okay, so if you'd rather not see that done, then that's fine. I plan on proposing that in this area between 25 and 50. I would
That's
like
fine there.
to propose that we do extend our management of the St. Andrews Park into that 25 where it currently exists, just because if we don't, it's gonna get shaded out and we're gonna lose.
well, if it's in there, I would think Heritage is probably going to ask you to maintain it that way.
So I will ask for a waiver for this hopefully we're gonna have it all resolved for the next meeting. Their 30 days doesn't expire until tomorrow, so we weren't gonna get it today. We were gonna get a letter that, that we didn't have. So I tried to keep it open, and I've got a conversation. Okay, well, that's good input, and I appreciate it. And I will talk with them and see what they feel about that. Because it's like if you stop doing something, it causes an alteration.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Okay.
That stuff in places.
So let's see if there's any public
Yeah.
comment on this.
You guys have any more questions? Okay. Any public comment? Okay. Seeing that, I'd like to continue
Please.
in about 2 weeks. Okay.
To the 19th.
To the 19th. Okay. Okay. Sunset House LLC, 15 Hollowell Lane.
Mr. Chairman, for the applicant, Art Gasparo, I'd like to request a continuance for 2 weeks, please.
Okay. Unless anyone has any objection, we'll continue for 2 weeks till the 19th as well.
Thank you.
Stephen L. Cohen, trustee.
Real quickly, as Paul is unpacking his stuff, this is one we continued last time. We
Yeah.
simply didn't have a file number for this. Other than that, you guys didn't have any questions, and instructed me to draft a positive order, so you want Paul to run through it.
But just as a refresher, this is a notice of intent for land within, land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's an existing structure located at the corner of Wall Street and James Street, in which we were infilling on 2 areas of the structure, removing some of the structure depicted in red on the plan that you have here. No change in grade, no change in any of the other features. Everything is occurring within the existing footprint of already developed area on the lot. We do now have the DEP file number.
Okay.
That was the remaining item that we needed.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions from the public? Okay. So would you like to close?
Yes.
We have everything to close, yeah?
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. BGWFT 2 LLC, 16 Brant Point Road.
Ryan Maxwell with Rocket Engineering. This notice of intent is for an addition in a flood zone. The addition is in an existing lawn area. The idea is we're going to match the first floor of the existing house, which is out of the flood zone. Pretty much it. No grade changes.
What kind of foundation is it?
It's a crawl space.
Breakaways?
Breakaways.
You know, I'm wondering if the rest of the house has it.
I don't believe it does.
Probably
No.
not.
They're putting flood vents on the new crawl space, so
Oh,
I would
okay.
assume that they'll have to add flood vents to the rest of the house to
Yeah.
make it work.
Typically, in
There's a wolf
these
brain.
cases, you have to bring the building into compliance.
Yeah.
So that means if it's at the proper elevation, they would just have to add some sort of panel or flow through or vent or.
So it's just those that, Ryan, right?
Yep.
Do you know what the depth to groundwater is here?
We don't know. Didn't do any borings to determine that.
18 inches.
Yeah, I
it's
did
not
some
been
work on this
feet, it's
property
in
years
inches,
ago, and it
yeah.
was wet.
Wet. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Questions from the public? Okay. Seeing none, would you like to close on this one? Chef?
Yep, we're good.
Everything close? Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
Move to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Feels kind of bad. I promised Don would be really hard on him. So process was too straightforward.
Okay, I know. Very
Nice little
simple.
runaround, you know?
White, 47A, Westchester Street.
Brian Madden from ABC Environmental. representing the applicants.
This board. This board.
Yes. So the proposed project involves installation of a pool, reconfiguration of the existing decking out there, installation of the associated pool fence equipment. No work activity has started on this parcel based on the original approval earlier this year. The intent is to start that relatively soon, get the mitigation plantings installed this fall. And one of the components with the additions is excavation of the pool. So we wanted to get that approved now to enable enough work area. The previously approved retaining wall in the back of the property there has been shortened in length. We've proposed some additional perimeter landscaping around that outer perimeter. The pool fence, the pool equipment, relocation, revised configuration of the decking, as well as the outdoor shower, and the pool itself are outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. This is all tucked in the northeastern corner of the property. And what is being proposed here is a 6-foot deep pool to avoid intrusion into high groundwater. We're not meeting the 2 feet of separation, but we are above groundwater. An 8-foot deep pool was initially proposed, but ultimately dismissed due to the high groundwater. So we're basically going to excavate right to the top of the high groundwater and then work our way up from there. So no anticipating dewatering or anything like that.
When did you do your water testing?
In spring, I've been out here so many times I handle it. Basically extrapolated the wetland elevation and what I've seen saturation and standing water to the known pool grades. Proposed pool grades.
How is equipment going to access to dig the pool?
It'd probably come right through here. The silt fence is going to be installed likely next week, and that's going to be the. And so, if you remember, there's that crabapple tree right around here. So it's just going to be tucking right there. So that's why they want to get the equipment and get it excavated before the work on the addition starts. So there's adequate room around that area.
Is there room to come around the north side of the house?
Yeah.
They might be able to get around the other side too.
It's you could probably sneak it now that the deck is being reconfigured. So there is some alternatives there.
We'd have to remove the trees, the existing arborvitae, get rid of the houses out there today, looking at
Yeah, you'd have to remove the arborvitae.
to be able to access from that point.
Can you quit say your name for the record, Dave? Sorry.
Sorry, David White, Seth White, owner.
Question?
Go ahead.
No, I wonder if you had a question.
Well, so, yeah, I was just concerned also about the construction traffic that comes through past the 25, right?
The compaction that will most likely go in there will be pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, everything will be restored in place. I mean, with the additions, that front of the property is going to get disturbed a little bit, so it's going to need to be restored in kind.
That's, what is that kind of called, long term?
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you, in actuality, going to be able to do plantings in the fall if the machines have to go?
Nope, yeah,
Through here?
there's plenty of room because it can be accessed through there, and then there's that flattish shelf working around through there. Again, we're proposing to eliminate that little driveway stub.
Only 1 day of digging.
Yeah, as part of the original approved project, but that will be kind of maintained through initial construction.
Then
so the silt fence kind of curls around through there. On the high side, the northerly side of the mitigation planting area.
Yeah.
And then basically under that crab apple tree. Yeah, it's like right here. Probably
Cutting more
trunk
buffer.
So yeah, and then it just runs right up to the property boundary.
So are you cutting into this buffer area to put the silt fence so that?
No, the only, what I was telling Ben, the crab apple tree is right here. So the trunk is about right there. We specifically designed it so it's kind of on the, underneath the crown, and so that tree can be kept as is.
Where's the pool gonna be discharged to?
Because of the fact that, I guess if there's a small portion out here outside the 100-foot buffer zone, we'd have to truck it off.
Yeah, because I'm
And-
pretty sure that
If the
water
commission,
flows down.
yeah, if the commission conditions that way, that's the way it would be.
That would probably be the preferred
Yeah.
option here, especially with the groundwater where it is and stuff.
I just say one condition maybe that would probably not be overly burdensome would be to add silt fence and maybe hay bales. This is all sloped down, right?
Yeah, we can certainly add that.
Yeah. So,
Or silt sock.
something, just
Yeah,
Yeah,
something
something.
in addition to the
Yeah.
silt fence, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Questions from the public? Emily?
Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. Just curious, I know it sounds like dewatering is not anticipated, but because it is so close, I'm wondering if there is sort of a backup plan for dewatering if it is necessary during the excavation for the pool.
Yeah, I mean, groundwater levels are relatively lower. So with, excavation likely scheduled for late October, early November, it's not anticipated we're getting into that. If, there is a significant need to do that, we'll come back. But again, it's not anticipated.
Any other questions? Okay. Would you like to close?
Please.
Okay. Jeff, you have everything you need to close?
Sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to close.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
So, request for determination, Swains Point Nominee Trust, 260 and 262, Walpus Road.
David Haynes for the applicant.
So make sure you give me the right one. Yes.
This is a request for determination for a septic system repair / upgrade. No expansion is involved. Of the system, but there is it's being sold and they do need to, and it's in two different locations. So there's two houses and there's two septic systems on this property. This is 260 Pulpus Road. As you come in, there's a house as you come in from Pulpus Road, and there's a septic system associated with that. It's an existing two-bedroom house, two-bedroom system. This system is slightly, it failed the inspection because it was too close to the water table, and so we'd like to just replace the trenches up higher and add a Septitex alternative system, so it's improved. And everything is outside of the buffer zone except a small portion of the existing septic tank, and the septic tank is just inside of the 100-foot buffer zone to a previously delineated and approved wetland system. We've reflagged it, I looked at it, I agree with it. Actually, I flagged it a long time ago, a couple of times. But this was flagged by others, and we do agree with that. This is all an existing lawn area. This is the one in the front of the property. There's a second one in the rear of the property, that's well outside of the buffer zone. No work is occurring in the buffer zone. And that septic system meets Title V and Board of Health regulations. The leach field does, but we're just adding a septic tech system to it. So it's no expansion. It's just adding the septic tech system to both of them. But the one in the front, we are raising the leach field up to get the required groundwater separation. And we do have silt fence proposed on the front one, just to prevent any, because there is grading, there is is coming close to the 100-foot buffer zone with some of the grading for the leach field, and also for the work on the septic tanks and the septic tank system. But the closest point would be at least 80 feet from the, I think it's closer to 90, but we've used 80 for the conversation. Everything will be loamed and seeded at the end of work, and it will be an improvement.
I got a curiosity question. Same owner, same properties? Is
Yes.
possibility, do you have to put your septic? Just I wondered if it was the option, the possibility of bringing the septic from here to higher ground, or the pumping it to higher ground. Has it been considered into the other lot? Would that even be legal?
It's actually, I believe, this is all the same lot.
Just curious.
So this is the Swains Point lot is the one that sits on the point of Pulpus Harbor. It comes down, we permitted the replacement of a bridge a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
There's the Tyler Creek that kind of separates these two
You have
portions
to
of the
go
lot.
force main across
That's
the,
all.
about half of it.
Oh, okay.
It would be-
Yeah, it's a substantial lot.
You'd be installing,
Yeah,
you'd
I
be
get it.
installing a couple pumps
Right.
to make that happen, probably, a really big one.
Doesn't look so far on paper.
So, and I will say too, this is actually kind of a,
Here's another plan that shows.
No, it's
yeah,
actually,
we're missing the big
joined,
middle
yes.
portion of the lot.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
I'll
no
also say
problem.
too, because this is the first one that we've really come in where this has been the case that, for those who missed it, the Board of Health passed a regulation in the last year requiring innovative alternative systems within the Nantucket Harbor watershed. And this is one of the first ones that we've had come in front of us where the septic system itself is Title V compliant and passes inspection, but because of that new bylaw, they're being required to upgrade that to an innovative alternative system to cut down on
Pollution
the amount of
levels.
nutrients getting in. So
Very good.
we'll probably see a few cases of this where people are putting in just the Septitech processor or microfast processor, whatever component is going in to provide that extra nutrient removal. So, I mean, I guess kudos to the Board of Health for kind of putting that on everybody. So,
Yeah.
but this is the first one we've seen.
Okay. No, I was just curious.
DOH is okay with this? They
Yeah.
signed off on it? Board of Health?
Yes.
They are in the process, if they have not, in the process of reviewing it. It's been submitted to them.
Yeah. I spoke to Artel.
Okay.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? Okay, seeing not. Ready to close? You have everything closed?
We do.
Would you like to close?
So you would, in this case, instead of
Oh, yeah,
closing,
you have I'm sorry. Your
I would
recommendation.
recommend that
Sorry.
we move to have a -3 to allow for the work in the buffer zone without the notice of intent.
Okay. Anyone like to make that motion?
Sorry, Jeff, how do you word that?
Say -3.
To issue a -3 to allow work within the buffer zone without notice.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Try to work on making that motion much more complicated.
Yeah, I was about to say. You know what? Okay. Amended orders and conditions. Mac Daddy Trust, 6872 Monomoy Road.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo and Stephen Cohen. We're before you for the second hearing on the request for an amended order of conditions for this property out towards the end of Monomoy Road. There was a couple of questions at the first hearing, so we have sort of tried to clarify the plans a bit. It's been a little while, so I'll go back over the project for you. I know there's a lot of lines on the plan, but I've gone with a lot of colors to hopefully make this as clear as possible. This is a project that was approved for essentially residential redevelopment, and there's an existing order of conditions. We're requesting an amended order of conditions. The property has transferred ownership, and the new owners have essentially fine-tuned the architectural plans for the property. Quickly to go over the resource areas, we have coastal beach, coastal dune, so that's shown in blue, and then we have land subject to coastal storm flowage. That also then intersects a coastal bank. There's two properties here, 68 and 72, as you may recall. So we have a bottom of coastal bank and a top of coastal bank, also in blue, and then with respective 25 and 50-foot buffer zones. There was also a coastal bank on the abutting property to the east, which hadn't been shown on the original plan, so that had come up at the last hearing, and we've added that to the plan, and that's also shown in blue with the same respective buffer zones shown to that resource area. To get into the colors a bit, I think, to try to hopefully clarify the project, the structures that you see with in black with the gray cross-hatching are what currently exist. And this was submitted with the application, but I thought that it might be helpful to have hard copies of just the 2015 aerial photograph. And this is the house at number 72, and this is the house at 68. So as far as the plan goes, this is this house, and this is this house. And we have a very large paved driveway, as you can see, all of which is proposing to be removed and converted to a shell gravel type mix. And so the plans and the changes that I wanted the commission to understand as part of the amendment, what I've done is to show in the light red lines what was approved here and here, and then in the bolder green line what is currently the proposal. And what I've done is I thought it was getting kind of confusing with decks and steps, so and since you consider it all structure, I just went around the perimeter of it all, if you would, with the green line. And so starting with the structure closest to the water, if you would, you can see that the green line, first off, the approved project is further away from the resource area on the abutting property. And now the changed amended plan is the structure is even further away from that resource area. There was an additional structure that was approved as right here, about 1,414 square feet shown in red, and garage studio structure. And so what we've done is that has been shifted to the south a bit to try to appease the abutters' concerns here, to get a little further away from them. The last time there was a deck that wrapped around the back, they were concerned with congregation of folks, if you would, up on this deck. So trying to be neighborly, we've worked with them and have removed that deck around that side. This structure remains the same size here in terms of the structure, but on this side you've got steps and deck to access the second floor there. So that's why I've still just included it all as structure. Moving up to the house at number 68, likewise you had a pool that was approved, and essentially, two structures which will now be connected. But again, the 50-foot buffer zone is shown in blue, in pink, and then we are further away with the currently proposed structure than what was approved. Furthermore, I think that the most important piece of this entire amendment is the very large reduction in structural area within your buffer zones and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And that was one of the main questions that had sort of come up at the first hearing. And you can see at the bottom of the plan, there's a chart where I've detailed, including the buffer zones to the resource area on the adjacent property, where I've done an analysis that said, that starts off saying, let's look at your entire buffer zone all the way out to 100 feet, realizing that structure is still allowed in the 50 to 100, but to give you a sense of the net reduction within your jurisdiction entirely, we're looking at 2,650 square feet. And then I know that of more concern is looking at the 25 and the 50-foot buffer zones. So I have done analysis that showed from 0 to 25, we're looking at a decrease of about 2,082 square feet, and from 25 to 50, about 1,363. Now I could have added, I suppose, one more that would have said 0 to 50, but that would just be the sum of the two figures there. So 3,400 and something square feet from 0 to 50. Now, much of that net removal is attributable to the paved driveway, which is considered structure under your regulations. But it's not just that. There's also, as you can see, we have, you can see the surrounding area is highly developed, and you can see that we have both of the existing structures that would be removed, to the tune of, this one is about 2,800 square feet, and the other one is about 1,400 square feet. But again, we feel that we have a very strong net benefit project in terms of the interest protected by the commission. The amendment essentially pulls back, for the most part, and overall, increases separation distance. As we said, it's really an adjustment, as we see it, to what was previously approved. And the other thing that had been requested was a landscape plan, and that's been developed and is included in the packet for the property. And again, it's respecting the same limits of work that had been previously approved, native species, working with a local designer who's really, quite familiar with at this point, enough projects, the expectations of the commission. And the lots are served by town water and town sewer, so we're not dealing with septic systems. An additional benefit that I think is very important to note is that the current structure is not currently compliant with the flood zone, and so this both what was approved as well as the amendment is going to comply with building code requirements for construction in the flood zone, as well as your requirements in terms of it would not be a solid fill foundation. You would have smart vents or piers, so essentially that any flood waters could flow beneath the structure. And with that, I think we would be happy to try to address questions, concerns, or comments that you may have with the application.
Questions? No?
So the main thing really is just that the gray is what's existing, but the red is what is already approved. So I think that the key is to sort of look at the difference between the red lines and the green lines and see a few things, which is one, that the green lines are better with their distances to the buffer zones, and that the net benefit is increased. I think that's all you really need to focus on is, are the changes from what you've already approved beneficial?
And the overall size in the newly proposed structures is similar?
Oh, yes. As you can see from the red compared to the green, the approved is in red, and again, what I did was to sort of sum it all out in the chart for you.
The structures are significantly hampered by zoning, so there's no real additional growth of the footprint. It's just a matter of shape and distance. Yeah. There's not a large expansion of the ground cover of the structures. In fact, I don't know if there's any.
And if I may, we did include all of the architectural drawings, which are HTC approved and, have been through the refined process, if you will, are rather very detailed, in fact, with respect to dimensions and, step configurations, elevations. They've really, I think the architects have done an excellent job trying to answer all the questions that I had in order to be able to provide you the accuracy of the numbers that you have.
So what you approved originally was essentially a footprint, and what we've done now is gone back and gone through the HTC process and gone through some design, and we're coming back to make that approved footprint reflect what we actually intend to build. And we think that what is proposed is a net benefit both from the design of the foundation, the location of the structures, and the square footage.
And I know there was a question last time, and I guess you guys addressed it with.
This line? Yeah.
So that's been added and included in the calculations.
And that has no, well, we'll hear from.
I don't think so because of the overall net benefit. Now, so again, the structures are within the 25 partially to small corner of that resource area. But again, it's further away. I suppose one of the lines that I really should have pointed out to you is not the blue highlighter, but the blue ink line is this driveway. And as you can see, the structures that are both approved and proposed are further away from the resource area than paved driveway.
Right.
So essentially, we would be removing asphalt in all of that area,
It's this line here.
right.
So you can see the existing garage is here, the existing asphalt is here,
Right.
the approved garage is here, and the proposed garage is further back.
Yeah.
Which was, essentially done to accommodate requests by the abutter, but also is beneficial from the buffer location.
So I just want to make it clear for the record before it comes up that on the original approval, for whatever means, that lot, the coastal bank line that's labeled as the per SE 48 2090 was not on the original approved plan. So when you're looking at this, make sure that you're looking at the buffer zones from that now, because that new 25 and 50 from that weren't shown previously, and it was an omission that we all missed. I missed it. Bruce missed it. Or
Yeah.
Steve missed it. The butters.
That
So
original
everyone
approval
missed it.
was by the seller, and our client is the purchaser, the more recent purchaser, and when we came back to permit the house instead of permitting just a footprint, the abutter brought that up, which we think is fine, because again, if you look at where the asphalt is, it's already closer than what was proposed by the seller and what's proposed by the buyer.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, real quick, to ask a question just to finish the clarity on this. Could you comment, Art, really quickly, as to explain why the toe of the coastal bank wasn't definable by slope? in that
Sure,
one
as you
corner?
can see from the contours, that coastal bank was defined as an intersection with the flood zone. So it's that DEP 92-2 policy that you hear about sometimes when a flood zone intersects a sloping landform, and that's what had essentially established that. And I've turned the contours on in here. You can see 5, 4. It's very, very flat in here. What I did was in this area, it does come down steep along the edge. So what I showed in blue is I defined a bottom of bank, which is labeled here, for where there is a definable toe of slope. I didn't have permission to come onto the neighbor's property here, but what I did was to come and look through the brush from the driveway here, and sure enough, it's very flat in this area. So, we didn't define essentially a toe of slope to, that we could I think, say, it's just in this area right here, and I think the contours support that, it's a very unique situation.
So,
Do you have, I see conceptual landscape plans, do you have like a plant list?
We could certainly provide a plant list. I know that she labeled the plants that are down towards the dune as beach grass and bayberry.
Right.
And I don't know that, I have an exact plant list, but certainly we would be happy to simply be conditioned to use native species. Absolutely.
so just to get back to my question really quick, Mr. Chairman, the reason I ask is because we need to remember that when we're evaluating performance standards under the Coastal Bank, especially as we look at the state act, and we're kind of old hats at this now, that coastal banks serve to provide separate functions. One is for the prevention of storm damage, and the other one is to essentially provide a sediment source through eroding. And sometimes coastal banks on sites, if there are multiple, are doing different things, and they're evaluated somewhat differently. I just wanted to get that clarified, so administratively speaking, that coastal bank and that portion of coastal bank is being evaluated as a storm damage prevention bank, and not as a sediment sourcey bank. So it's kind of a bad word to use, sourcey. But,
Sourcey. I like it.
Thought it was a good word.
we just have a lot of different banks on this site that are behaving a little differently.
Yeah.
So.
If I could expand on that, I think that's a very good point that, it's very clear that the project as proposed is not going to in any way impact that protected interest.
Right. And for what it's worth, it should also just note the notation that there's a double boardwalk here, and we're removing one of them. Is one a path of boardwalk, or are they both boardwalks?
They're both boardwalks
Yeah.
that are there right now.
So
Pre-existing.
the homeowner can live with one.
Is this all gonna happen at once?
Yes.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? All right.
Sarah Aldred, I represent the Eagleharts, who are directly next door at 74 Monomoy. I just wanted to remind you of the chronology of this. There was a 2001 NOI that the surveyors did for the Eagleharts that showed this particular coastal bank, and the Eagleharts are on the upland side of that and had to maintain all setbacks from it. Then Bob Emack did an NOI for the property that you're looking at now in 2013, and he showed that coastal bank, and he was able to define, I think, the toe of the bank for his. Now, and that was good for a number of years, and it was still in effect when in 2013 the Anathons came in and did their first NOI, and that NOI did not show this coastal bank. And then in 2015, that was this plan that didn't show it. And then again, the modification was filed in 2016. Doesn't show it either. So that's, I just want that background in the record. So now we fixed that, I guess, although I don't understand why the toe of the bank can't be found. We certainly had these surveyors on the Eaglehart property, and if they needed to go on the property to establish the toe, we would have gladly given permission for that to happen.
Yeah.
I think what you have here, basically, in terms of this McNaddy property, is property that's in a bowl. So, I think if you extend the line along its logical, I think you've got basically all this development happening in the bowl, which is all land subject to coastal storm flowage. And in making your analysis, your net benefit analysis, there are a couple things that I want to point out. The first thing is that when this garage structure was originally approved, it wasn't part, this one, it wasn't part of the waiver request. And it wasn't part of the waiver request because it wasn't, at that point, shown to be within any buffer zone. Now it's being shown and it's within, at least at some portions, within 25 feet. Definitely within 50. So it's clearly now going from a structure that didn't have a waiver to being a structure that now does require a waiver. I think when you're looking at that, you should be looking at the net benefit to the land subject to coastal storm flowage. In their analysis, they're taking credit for a whole bunch of net benefit that's coming from this upland area that's on what is now a completely separate lot that they're going to be using and developing separately. And I think they need to separate out and show what is the net benefit to the area within the bowl, which is the land subject to coastal storm flowage. And I can't tell that from the analysis that they've given. The other thing is that they're taking credit for driveway, that's existing paved driveway that they're replacing it with a gravel shell combination. And I think over time, that will become impervious as well. So I really question whether it should be a one-for-one net benefit, taking asphalt and replacing it. It's still driveway. I think your regulations refer to driveway as being structure. So to the extent that it's still driveway, I think it's still structure and shouldn't count towards their net benefit argument.
So, Sarah, can I ask you a question? Would your client then prefer that they not do the minor mod and it goes back to what's been approved, which seems to be worse?
Right. Well, I think what we'd ask is since that original approval was granted on the basis of mistaken information, we'd be asking under 136(4)E that the permit be, that existing permit be revoked. And under 136(4)E, it says the commission may deny or revoke a permit at any time, even after commencement or completion of work, if the applicant fails to comply with the requirements of this chapter, fails to comply with the regulations promulgated pursuant to this chapter, fails to comply with the conditions of a permit, fails to submit necessary information, and then it says the inaccuracy or incompleteness of plans or other information required to be submitted to the commission shall be grounds for denial or revocation of an application. This provision shall apply even if such inaccuracy or incompleteness is not apparent until after a permit has been issued, and shall apply whether or not such inaccuracy or incompleteness is the result of intentional or willful conduct. So we're not suggesting that this was done intentionally or willfully, although we don't really understand how it happened. So what we'd be asking for is for you to revoke that original approval under that provision.
Well,
In the alternative, I think not doing the garage, we don't have a problem with the house itself, per se. But the garage seems like an addition that's sort of unnecessary. The other piece that I want to mention to the commission, two things actually, is that in the landscape plan that they submitted, there are significant areas that are covered by antique granite risers and steps, antique granite pavers, and I've marked those on this plan. I don't believe that any of those areas have been counted towards structure in the net benefit analysis, and should be. And then there's just a small, and I'm sure this is unintentional, there's a small discrepancy in the location of the garage between the site plan that's been submitted submitted in the architectural plan. The architectural plan shows this structure further, further west and south than it is shown here. It's hard, very hard to do the comparison, but just looking at the curved line of the setback, you can see that this structure is not as far west and south. See how this comes up like this and then curves in here?
I'm not following that piece.
You're not?
No.
All right, well, if you,
Those should match exactly. I definitely don't follow that, but.
okay, well, they don't completely.
So the plan, not the architectural, is the application.
Okay, well, then I object to the location of the garage on the site plan, because it doesn't meet what was approved by the HDC. And it should.
Well, I think that,
And that's actually the location that we agreed to in our conversations.
which one?
Maybe we can, if I may, I'm not following you, Sarah. I really think that those match
You do?
exactly the same. I think they're exactly the same, because look at the relationship between,
But see how there's a gap
Yeah.
between the setback, and this is down on the curve?
yeah, the curve isn't shown on this plan at all. I'm not sure, I don't see what you're relating it to.
Okay, well, maybe,
Because, see, I don't-
maybe I'm misreading
I think you might
this
be,
plan.
because I shut off the zoning lines on this plan trying to reduce some of the number of lines.
All right, well, if you can show me that it's the same.
Yeah,
then
it's
I'll
the
with-
same.
Then I'll withdraw that piece of the
You can
objection.
see
That's the minor piece.
It was meant to be. I mean, I think it's exactly the same. I used their stuff, and that line, I'm not sure what I think you might be looking at a curve. I don't know. There's no curved line on this plan. Either way, those are the same.
Okay.
And the intent was for them to be the same. So if I could, I don't know, are you done, or should I respond?
Go ahead.
So just to start early on, if you look at,
Can I just mention one other thing?
yeah, sure. I
Are
mean-
these are definitely not solid infill foundations?
That's correct,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, that wasn't clear from the plans. And it also looks like the garage structure has gotten about 100 square feet bigger. Is that possible with the addition of the stairways and decking?
Yeah.
Than the original, so it's about 100 square feet bigger than what was approved when it wasn't in a buffer zone.
Right, because I've included the deck and the stairs, exactly.
Okay.
The plan we have in our packet does show the zoning setback still on it.
You have probably two plans. What's the date on the bottom of the packet? I think that Jeff might have included the earlier plan, and then there was two submissions. See, the one you're looking at might not have, see, that one's not this plan. That was from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you'll see that one doesn't have the calculations in the bottom corner. So you would want to make sure that the plan you're looking at in your packet is dated September 30th.
There was a filing, and then we continued, and one of the reasons why we continued was to produce this more better information.
I think I could address most of the comments that were raised. With respect to the resource area on the adjacent property, the EMAC plan doesn't actually define a toe of bank. It says top of bank if you look very closely.
Okay.
So he only defined a top as well. And what I've done is to be even more conservative and to define a toe of bank in here, where the slope comes down steep, on our own property. So we've gone ahead and even though that was never previously defined as a resource area, we've gone ahead to be conservative. In terms of coming over onto the other property, I really don't think that it would make all that much of a difference, because it's very flat in here. Whatever small slope there might be in there.
And you can see these are consistent, if not more conservative on our plan.
And then, exactly, the plan, you can notice that the shape is exactly the same, because I literally took this line and put it on the plan. See how this shape is like this? It's the exact same line that was previously approved. So we're definitely, as I see it, on apples to apples on your resource areas. With respect to the waiver and the structure, what I did was to address in the correspondence that we believe that the waiver as we see it for this project is based on the overall project. And the waiver is granted in the order of conditions for structures within the 50-foot buffer zone. So we've shown this structure now that it is within a buffer zone to the abutting property, but it still remains justifying that waiver as the overall project gets the waiver. In terms of taking benefit for number 68 and applying it down here, again, we've looked at it, this is all one application and one project. However, I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm taking probably more benefit from number 72 because you can see the number I put on the plan right here of driveway is 4,600 square feet. So, you know, that's a large reduction, you know, on this lot. I think that the commission has what it needs. You tell me if you feel differently, but that by giving you all of the numbers overall, and that it doesn't really need to be broken down on a per lot basis. It's an order of conditions that covers the overall project. In terms of you know, considering land subject to coastal storm flowage, again, you know, we are greatly reducing the impervious area through the reduction of the in terms of your regulations of the asphalt driveway. We're also reducing the overall amount of driveway, whereas this is a big, you know, sort of loop. You can see that this is the proposed driveway now, right in here. And it doesn't have the big loop, and all of this is driveway. That I think that's probably best shown on the aerial, right? So you're not going to have all of this anymore. In terms of the concern for the stone risers, again, it would typically be considered a landscape feature, but even if you were to want to consider that as structure, it's going to come nowhere near tipping the net benefit scale on the big, you know, if it's a couple hundred more square feet of stone landscape risers, you know, again, which we don't, I think are you know, fall under your regs as, and always have been considered as landscape feature. But in terms of the net benefit in the resource area, I don't see that having an overall, you know, negative that's going to tip it back the other way, that you don't have a project now that meets your performance standards as well as continues to justify the waiver for having overall net benefit and reduction of structural area. So,
if I could piggyback a couple of Art's points, just in terms of the composition of the driveway, this commission generally has approved shell gravel mix as acceptable. If the commission would prefer a different alternative, you know, that's something as a policy you're welcome to do and could implement through the order of conditions. We certainly aren't going to, you know, hold up this project over the driveway material. And I'm really a little surprised and somewhat floored at the suggestion that the prior permit or approval should be revoked, and I want to very clearly make the point that this is a request for an amendment to an existing order of conditions, and there's no appropriate request. That is not an appropriate request in this hearing. If they want to challenge the order of conditions, they're welcome to, but this is just a request for a modification. However, I also think it's an entirely moot point because the solution is clearly in front of you, which is that, you know, Sarah's client brought up the fact that there was a missing piece of information, and you now have an application in front of you that takes into account that application, and I think it stands on its own merits. So your opportunity to address the situation is this application. You know, as you can see, the blue line of the asphalt is much closer, and I think that if you ask yourself, you know, would you approve that red garage, and is the green garage better? I think the answer is yes. The project stands on its own merits. with all of the information in front of you, and I would hope that you would agree with that assertion.
I would just want to add, this new garage may be better than the old garage. The old garage was permitted under false pretenses. It's not up to the neighbor to bring an application to have this permit revoked. It's simply a power that the commission has if they want to revoke the order. I'm suggesting that it's probably easier to remove the garage from the project entirely and permit the amendment to go forward with the house. They can always come back for an appropriate garage at another time. In terms of the land subject to coastal storm flowage, unlike other areas of the island where you're looking at land subject to coastal storm flowage, this land actually is functioning as land subject to coastal storm flowage. The water's going to come into this bowl and come out, and I think you need to be dealing with it separately and know what the impacts to this project are. Now, maybe Art's right that the impact is actually better when you separate out 68, but I don't think that you have the information in front of you to know. You don't know how much driveway is currently within the land subject to coastal storm flowage. You don't know how much is proposed after the fact. I don't buy the argument that all these antique granite pavers are just landscape features. They're steps and walkways. They're pretty significant, as I showed on that highlighted plan. I think they need to be counted, and you need to have that information before you can make a decision.
I think Art said even if they're counted, it's still well within what is traditionally approvable by this commission.
Questions? Any other questions from the public? Well, do we have everything to close on this one? Would you like to? Do we have other questions that need to be answered?
Administratively, we have
Yeah.
all of the requirements to
Yeah.
close the public hearing. Whether you guys feel you have enough
Do you need any
information
more questions?
to make a decision is a
Yeah.
completely different question.
Is this one that we should consult with town council on?
We'd like to close and move forward, but if the commission has any concerns, including concerns about concerns raised by the abutter, you know, we'd rather continue than move
Right.
forward with a problem. I think that the information you have in front of you is, you know, more than justifies all the waivers that are legitimately sought, and that the concerns that the abutter has raised are well addressed by the application. And the exact square footage of the landscaping features is something that could easily be, you know, figured out. It's and I think somewhat irrelevant to the application in the terms of the volume and the location. It's not. I don't see it as something that should prevent us from moving forward. But certainly, you know, if there was a concern by the commission, then you would make one decision or another based on how big the steps are.
I think we have to look at it as like this. Had this been included in the first application, would we have gone through and approved everything as it's drawn?
Well,
So that's one.
Right.
And would we have said, okay, well, that, you know, see some, we had a driveway here, we had a house here. I see that's further away, that might have passed muster. Would the garage have, or would we have said, you know, let's take the garage and move it that way a little bit to get it totally out of the.
well, even wouldn't have gotten totally. Although I think the driveway's a big feature.
I think it's a big
Big
feature
feature
too.
for-
I do agree that we approved
Storm
Sylvia's
flow.
driveway right up to the 25 all the time.
Yeah.
And
And-
this is definitely proposed as a pervious driveway, so I
Yeah.
think it's a big benefit to get rid of this asphalt.
I tend to agree.
And I also, going on Jeff's clarification on this point, this resource area, this work should not affect the performance of this resource area.
Right. That won't affect the bank.
This.
It's kind of a policy
Right.
bank, really, anyway.
Right.
Well, I think, keep in mind, I want to clarify my comments just to make it clear, is obviously when you have the resource areas on the site, obviously coastal beach and coastal dune are not coastal dune is affected with its buffer zone for the one house, is the banks and then the land subject to coastal storm and flowage. The important thing to remember as part of the discussion is the waiver that's being applied for is only applicable to the coastal bank.
Right.
Unless the waiver for land subject to coastal storm flowage would essentially be asking to waive the requirement that you would be essentially allowed to diminish the flood storage capacity of the lot by an amount that commission considers less than a de minimis amount.
Okay,
Right.
but the resource area that is being brought into question by this new information is not land subject to coastal storm flowage, it's the coastal bank.
Right, so when you're thinking about the waiver and the analysis, I mean, you're judging it against the performance standards and the interest for coastal bank.
Mhm.
So just related to the waiver, you still have to evaluate and complete the analysis on the project as it relates to its potential impacts to land subject to coastal storm flowage, but they're not specifically asking for a waiver from those standards. I just wanted to clarify, because projects with multiple resource areas and waivers get kind of confusing, because the waiver is not related to the flood zone, the waiver is related to the coastal bank. If I have to somehow put that on the paper, I want to make that clear.
Okay. Well, I think everybody has an idea of where they want to go with this. So, do you have a recommendation?
If you guys think you have enough information, you can close the public hearing and then deliberate the amended order if you want. Or you could request an amended order be drafted for the next hearing with a, you guys could determine whether you wanted to issue out a denial of the amendment or a positive issuance of the amendment or what conditions that are going to be on it.
Well,
Or any findings that you wish.
If we're going to issue a denial, we should give them a chance to change the plan before we deny. I mean, that's sort of our typical model, isn't it, to kind of poll the commission to see if we're going to approve or deny, to give them a chance to come back.
Right. Well,
I would also make sure, too, that you guys also have, if you feel that knowing some of the information that the butter requested as far as breakdowns or anything, that if you feel there's anything else that would aid in a decision, now would be the time to ask before you close the public hearing, because as soon as you close,
right.
you can't get that information. So be sure you have everything you need.
Can I add one thing? I think if you're leaning towards allowing this, I think you should require that everything be outside of the 25.
I don't see the problem personally with that. I tend to agree with the outside the 25. Personally, I would approve. I'd be willing to approve this project.
Only 20.
There's a lot in the 25.
Well,
already
the struck the green.
Yeah, see, that doesn't
So right
really
here.
work as a blanket.
No, I'm talking of the
I'm not talking about the house.
not the
I'm
house
talking about
of the garage itself. I mean, the house is sort of taking a pre-existing houses.
Because we're
Yeah.
closer here, right, than the proposed. Do you have statistics between what was proposed, or what was approved versus what is now proposed? The differences there?
Well, that would be on that would be on it would be on the plan that was approved. I did the similar chart, but that didn't take into account that other buffer zone.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
Another way to look at this, though, is that they've taken existing 2,800 square feet into 0 to 25 and decreased it by almost all of that down to 752. So there's a substantial improvement.
Yeah.
And is that good enough? I mean, we often, look at a net benefit and they might leave something in there, but they're taking a bunch out the way it is.
Like I said.
I guess my tendency would be to approve the project.
I'd be willing to approve the project as well. What would your take on this one?
I would go on the net benefit overall. I mean, I know we're but I still think it's significant.
Yeah. Ashley?
I guess the landscaping aspect, because I just feel like there will be some great impacts to the harbor during the construction of this project. It's a very sensitive area. The landscaping changes, I'm still having trouble reading. So right now we have an edge of lawn here that was maybe going to be revegetated with the approved path.
That was an approved path.
And now
right.
the new path, when I look at the landscaping
Comes down
plan,
right, yep, right in here.
it opens up a lot more.
The edge of lawn that
area.
exists there is gonna be maintained as the same edge. And I would say that in terms of, I don't think there would be any impact whatsoever to the harbor from the project. We can agree to add we can add a row of hay bales if you wanted to the silt fence.
Well, I just even
I mean-
think during storms, we're in such a low spot that the interface,
This doesn't flood. This area is higher than, say, much of Grant Point, only by a foot or two, but I've never seen water come up over this dune and into this property, right? So you look at these elevations. I understand that there will be a storm, but I don't think that, with the appropriate erosion and sedimentation controls in place, that during construction activity that you're going to see any kind of an impact as a result of that. And in fact, I think the overall landscape plan, again, given that you have a runoff from such a large driveway, it comes all the way down here. While the thing when you change to gravel is that your runoff coefficient in terms of the water, to think of it more simply, it's broken up by a rough surface, right? Now, it might all infiltrate, right? But it doesn't come running down a gravel driveway or shell driveway the way it comes running down an asphalt driveway. Mm-hmm. So I think that overall does provide, the benefit there. And again, the only way I would see an impact to the harbor would be essentially a failure of erosion and sedimentation control, which we could agree to, say, if you wanted to put a condition that said monthly construction reports and photos of the erosion control device, that would be, I see that concern. I don't want to see that happen either. And I know who the contractor is. I've worked with them. I know that these guys are, this is going to get set up, and I just don't see that there's going to be anything that makes it from this site down over into the harbor.
but even just going down into the ground and getting to the water table.
But what is it? It's
So when we're disturbing all of this land, because everything that you
we're not
do
disturbing any of the bank in here, so that all stays. That's not getting disturbed. It's really, and I think if it helps you,
the landscaping plan just seems unclear.
I think if it helps when you look at the overall area, the level of residential development. But again, I think that the landscape plan here, as you can see, it's very much about, heavy vegetation, shrubs, that you can see through this area. They're not coming down here and putting in, big open lawns. That's not, that's not the proposal. And the lawn that you can see, there's a lot of supplemental plantings up above the bank. And then this is the only lawn, which is what exists right now, which is what you can see right up in here. That's really the only lawn. I think the overall is that it really is residential redevelopment that, ultimately results in an improvement.
And, getting that house up off the ground is going to help as well.
Yeah, well, you're going to have all the flowage underneath potential as well, which you never had before. So, do we have any discussion on conditions or?
I think the improved silt fencing would be a good idea, just to make sure, but
whatever robust conditions Jeff came up to protect construction process, I think are all acceptable. No one wants to see anything happen negatively to the harbor during construction.
I'm happy to do reporting during construction. I know this owner would say no problem and have me do say whatever you want, weekly reports, monthly reports, photos, to make sure that you know doesn't happen. I know that I could commit to that. Bi-weekly, if that seemed a little more reasonable.
Well, at this point, does anyone want to make a motion?
You ready to go with that? Yeah,
We're ready.
move to close the hearing and issue the amended order with
Well, let's-
conditions,
Do you wanna wait
or just
until
close
Let's-
the hearing?
Let's close the hearing first.
Okay, I make the motion to close the hearing.
Good second. So, anyone make a second on closed? Okay. Oh, second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
Well, this is just to close the hearing.
So for close.
All right, just want to make sure
Okay,
that's
so-
clear.
The meeting is closed with the approval, everyone except Commissioner Harrison.
Well, we still have to deliberate the order of
Right.
conditions. That was just simply to end public discussion.
Right.
So now, if you want to discuss what type of order to get issued out, and then what conditions would go on there, now would be a good time.
Well, I personally don't have a problem with the idea of moving the garage farther in, but it's not steadfast on it, but I don't know. I don't know how much of a difference it would make. It might be just be a, yeah, I mean, it's,
And then where's the parking?
That ends up bringing the parking closer to this bank,
Right.
I think is what you end up doing.
So,
It's a pretty small area.
yeah,
Again, I think if you look at the overall change in this project,
it's much
it's
greater.
pretty substantial.
Oh, I
And
agree.
I agree that the driveway, I mean, we've always pushed people to not put asphalt down if possible, and they're taking asphalt out, which I think we have to recognize as a good thing. And Sarah's point that they're not perfect, they don't infiltrate like a lawn but they infiltrate better than asphalt.
Oh, it's true. I mean, we also get the infiltration of the new structure, which
Yeah,
never
we have
happened
a
with
lot
the
of
original
those
structure,
areas.
so it's actually
and these
quite
are,
a huge amount of area.
as far as the coastal storm flowage component of this is all breakaway panels on this foundation.
Probably engineered smart fence at this point,
Yeah.
which would be, I'm sorry.
So just make sure if you have a question as part of deliberation, that it's merely a question for clarity and not any opportunity to present any new information.
No new information. Okay. So,
But it'll be,
That's the point of closing the hearing.
they'll have to do that to the building department too.
Yeah.
Because, go by those
So-
regs.
silt fence, hay bales, what are we gonna condition? That's just to protect this job site, the harbor from the job site, I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that the plant material that goes in has to be native, but also looked at a little bit, because even a native plant coming from these nurseries off island come with a handful of fertilizer in the container. And with the landscaping that's proposed, that is a lot of impact going into this area.
So we have beach grass, what's proposed down there, beach grass and bayberry. I haven't seen much in the way of beach grass plugs coming fertilizer, I'd say that.
No, but even up in some of these other areas,
Right, so
there's a
we're-
lot of,
Can you even get
Planting.
beach grass here? You can't even get beach
I
grass
think
here.
it would be
What's the
important.
BMP say about, I mean, is there
There is a two pounds of nitrogen
per thousand
per
square
thousand
feet?
square feet per year, which I suspect the aggregate of a landscape planting probably would not exceed that. I think it would probably fall within the BMP, even based on what comes in a plant, honestly.
Yeah, I have no idea how much fertilizer is jammed in those things.
I mean, it's not, there's no exact science, but if you look at a plant, it's got a bunch of blue pellets in it. But the density of that fertilizer, even as an aggregate, I don't think would
topsoil here.
Pretty much, yeah, it comes in.
You know, where are we at with, between the 25 with? there's
I
no
mean, you could simply
fertilizers,
condition,
No fertilizers. and
Yeah,
then-
no fertilizers in the
So,
25, yeah.
Whatever is proposed. Here, okay. Here, all in here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not sure how we do it, some places, but.
well, you could simply put a condition that, you know, in this case, it would be condition number 22, that no fertilizers are permitted within the 25-foot buffer zone. And that's simply their burden to maintain that. And then I would say the easiest way to track that would be something that they had proposed, which would then be a condition 23, that, you know, biweekly construction logs go on, and included in that log is a verification that no fertilizers have been used within the 0 to 25-foot buffer zone. And then the onus is on the construction supervisor to provide, to demonstrate that that's the case, whether that's, you know, photos of plants that went in that don't have fertilizer on them, whether that's having, you know, the landscaper verify, or the provider of the plants verify that they're fertilizer free. I mean,
We'll take a picture of the little blue pellets we collect.
so,
Vacuum it up.
There'll be lots. And I guess, does that, when we say native plants, does the lawn count as native grass species? Because there's a huge impact to maintaining the lawns that we put in now, which is gonna be in here too, you know, and when we
Keeping up
start
with everybody
doing
else
that,
down there, I know.
it's a problem, you know, like, I don't think that's the lawn that's gonna be kept.
Well,
well, I would say, based upon what I heard, that my understanding was the lawn area that was there was shown and on the plan as the area that's gonna be a manicured lawn. Typically, when we've required native species, it's related only to, I would, for lack of better terms, the ornamental plantings and non-grass on the lot, with the exception of, you know, native meadows and things that we've required.
Yeah, we've never required people to put in blue stem or Pennsylvania sedge into their lawn. We've always allowed them to use the Cape Cod mix, and again, then they have to do any kind of fertilizing has to be done to the BMP, which again, they can't fertilize in the 0 to 25. And I know, I mean, that's an issue, and we went around and around and around when we were doing the BMP on this very issue of, should we have a special thing in the harbor watershed where we don't have any fertilizer in the harbor? And we just thought that would be an impossible thing to implement and maintain. And I mean, we have to do what we can, the best we can do with what we've got, and that's. And again, I think, and I mean, Ben can speak more to this than I can, but I think people can use minimum amounts of fertilizer, you know, do the BMP and have a very nice yard. And if it's done properly, there's probably not a lot of leaching. We would hope anyway.
Well, I think that we have to rely on the regulations that are in place, and the onus is on the applicant to follow them. So we say, no fertilization, either introduced with the plantings, or otherwise is allowed in the 25-foot buffer.
Yeah, I think that simply just said the commission would say no fertilizer is allowed from 0 to 25. So anything you're bringing in or anything you're applying would have to be fertilizer free in that area. So, just to get it right on the order, we'd have a condition 22, that no fertilizers to be allowed within the 25-foot buffer zone. And then I think with that from the discussion, I was hearing a condition 23 are pretty standard, that no cultivars are to be allowed in areas of native planting. 4, that silt fence with hay bales be installed at the limit of project directly adjacent to Nantucket Harbor. Actually, we read, silt fence and hay bales are to be installed at the limit of work nearest to Nantucket Harbor. And then we had a 25, bi-weekly construction logs. Shall be provided for commission review. For commission review, including verification of the fertilizer restriction. And to kind of circle back on the garage, was that a condition that you wanted to see, that the garage be located outside of the 25-foot buffer zone?
Wasn't a make or break for me, I just thought I'd bring it up.
No, me neither.
No, that doesn't sound like it.
Sorry, and then for the conditions, that I had one recommendation for this one too, in the findings. But I'll finish the conditions first.
Okay.
All right, so in the additional findings in the original order, we had a number 2, that resource areas were approved under request for determination of applicability dated 5/27/2015. I'm going to recommend an additional finding number 3 that says resource areas, the resource area approval is superseded by the resource areas as shown on the plan of record related to the amended order of conditions, with the plan information there, so that the request is gone and that it's clear that these resource areas are used for determining the findings and conditions, and then going forward, those are the resource areas that are approved.
I guess the thing with the garage, you know, it's a corner of the garage, maybe 50 square feet, something like that, I don't know.
Right.
And there's, we're allowing 752 square feet in the 0 to 25. Why don't we take it all out if we're going to take, if we're going to take out 50 square feet? What about that other 702 square feet? It seems kind of like we're slicing things pretty thin here to me.
Yeah.
And is that anywhere that the garage is built right?
Yeah, the problem is, it's got the
It's a
zoning
drive.
setback right there, so you can't move it that way.
Okay.
So if there are no more conditions, I mean, you could.
Can I ask for clarification, Jeff? Did you mention no infill foundation as a clarification, because the plans weren't clear on that?
No, we certainly could
Sure.
put that in. We put that in recent orders in the flood zone, that no infill foundations.
Yeah.
So I ask for clarification, what exactly is an infill foundation?
So it's like a solid fill foundation. If you remember, we actually had one
Oh,
that
that
was
one,
proposed a
yeah,
couple weeks
yeah.
ago, where instead of having it as a flow through or something that's spaced, it's filled in or
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
allow
so-
for the passage of water through.
Yeah, okay.
So what that's memorializing is that, in this case, these structures are required to be flood zone compliant structures,
Right.
not to our
right.
standards.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't see them much anymore, but occasionally one of them floats our way.
Or sinks, whatever it would be.
Okay.
So if everyone's satisfied with that, you could move to
Make a motion.
issue that as amended.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, we'll move to issue it as amended for conditions.
All those in, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Yes, I'm in favor of the changes.
Okay.
was a unanimous, sir.
Okay, that one threw me. Okay, Hummock Pond Realty Trust, 86 Hummock Pond Road.
All right, here comes another good blast from the Mathis team.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant and I'll just give brief history because I think this kind of predates most of everyone. Maybe around. Two orders of conditions were issued in 2007 for construction of a single-family home on this 3.5-acre lot. Previously, I had filed an RDA to confirm wetland resource areas which were approved. In the order of conditions, two separate orders were issued, one under the State Act and one under the bylaw. They were both approvals, but under the town bylaw order, it denied a septic system that was proposed on the lot. So since then, water and sewer have been extended down Hummock Pond Road.
This property.
The bike path, the bike path has been installed as well. So, kind of with all that coming into play here, things are now updated. There's been some minor reconfigurations with the home, all outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. Proposed sewer connection out to the road, water connection out to the road. There was previously a well that was approved. The driveway got flipped to the other side of the house, and then consequently some of the limit of work has been updated accordingly with these changes. And additionally, what's being proposed is initially it was a pile foundation. This is going to a crawl space foundation, but the bottom of the crawl space foundation will be 8 inches above high groundwater. And what you have out here is the typical perched system where there's clean sand down below. So the proposed dry well locations, which were part of the original approval, are now updated on this plan, and a detail has been provided to basically punch through that variegated perch soils down to clean sand.
I'm gonna hop in because this one's kind of confusing for history, and I know Ernie and Andy both sat on this. So they have probably a better sense of history. So with this one too, not to muddy the waters, this is a very strange order of conditions, one that I'm not a very big fan of, where it approved all of the work and then denied the single component of the septic system. And then subsequently, the applicant came back for a different septic system proposal in 2009 into 2010, and that permit was denied, but it was only for the septic system.
Yep.
I think that may have been ultimately withdrawn.
So, no, it was
Yeah.
denied.
Oh,
I
it's
double checked.
2009?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was denied. So this is a very interesting order because right now the order is both an approval and a denial, which I don't know how you can really do that, but it is. But that's a little bit more of the history for what went on the lot, and then it sat essentially vacant for the time until sewer extended and sewering removed the septic component, but the permits needed to be updated to address it. That also being said, and not to muddy the waters even more on this one, the delineation that's in place is still valid. However, it is almost 10 years old because this lot benefited from a 3-year permit, and then it was able to get a 3-year extension. And in that time, the Permit Extension Act hit, so it was able to get an additional 4 years. So by the time this permit were to expire, if it's granted next May, so May of 2017, this permit will have been active for 10 years. It's really the longest possible permit, the permit extension Act could grant for us. Be that as it may, that's still a line that is legally valid through the order. But I at least wanted to kind of give everyone the remainder of the history here, because it's kind of murky.
My line's only changed after 12 years, so.
Yeah. So these dry wells, they go down only
14 feet.
14 feet
Is what would
to
be
the
it.
perch water table.
Exactly.
So Brian, there'll be some kind of a seal so they won't, I mean, the concern
Drain.
about the septic system we had was that if it's gonna go down through the perched water table, is it just gonna
Suck.
drain the water table? And will these things be somehow, like have a wall around them so that they're, go down through, but they won't be able to flow into it?
Like a zone of infiltration,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so you're not like basically draining the perched water
Yeah.
table by going down into the,
Certainly no engineer or hydrologist, but, they're only 2 4-foot wide circles, basically. So I don't think that would be the case. I mean, they're backfilled with clean sand and washed stone. I don't think they're really going to draw down water levels. Initially, what was being proposed, there was a well proposed. That has since been taken out, so that may offset each other. Yeah, I wouldn't expect just for two dry wells for a 1,300 square foot house. Yeah, we don't know definitively what the groundwater flows within that perched area is. I mean, it could be somewhat static, so it's kind of too difficult to predict, I think.
Right, I think we looked at this this area. I think it flows, west. It's in my memory that this area that came up
Yeah,
because it was flowing towards me. Oh, yeah, man.
everything flows to
Way over here.
it's an interesting question. I mean, because that water's going on the ground now, it's the roof drainage is what you're concentrating in.
Yeah, so it's not a huge.
Especially when you consider the road drainage. I mean,
Yeah, and then how big that wetland is behind there, it's huge.
yeah.
I worry about punching holes in perched water tables.
I agree. Agree.
I don't know if we'd better just to make a rain garden or something out there.
Yeah, the dry wells were part of that original approval.
Okay.
I don't know if they had a detail on that.
So there's going to be a crawl space, regular 4-foot down crawl space.
Yeah.
And what was originally approved for that?
Pilings. With the septic up. Yeah, that perch groundwater is at elevation 17. Top of the foundation is 23.5. So the bottom of the footing is 8 inches above that. So it's like 17.8. Or, whatever that.
Well, it's definitely improvement.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing that held up the project was that, it was kind of like, well, if they had town sewer, then this would be fine. But
Exactly.
without the town sewer and town water, so that's,
Now it's come.
yeah. Is it the same owners that have always held on to this lot, or has it changed?
Yeah, since 2007, yeah.
Boy, they're patient people.
No kidding. Okay. And you don't think there'll be a need for dewatering?
No, I mean, and certainly not with the crawl space.
Yeah.
with the dry wells, I mean, it'd be so minimal,
Yeah,
if anything.
4-inch, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whatever that is, this is a 4-foot hole. It's actually quite a big hole. 4-foot in diameter hole to put in your 4-inch.
Yeah, I think that's the standard spec for dry wells.
About 14 feet. That's actually quite substantial, but temporary. Questions? Okay. Questions from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I just have a couple of questions for clarification and maybe concerns. I was just noticing the proposed lawn area, and part of this is kind of forgetting what was part of the original order and what maybe was already permitted or not. I know we were pretty involved in this application back in the day. So I was just kind of wondering if that area that looks like currently is partially vegetated is, if that was allowed for the original order. I know it's outside of the 25-foot buffer zone, but, and then just how that ties into the area that's already cleared, within the 25-foot buffer zone, if that's gonna be maintained as lawn. Sort of just over here, how the existing edge of vegetation ties into what's planning is. So I guess sort of general landscaping questions for the lot, what's gonna be proposed there.
Yeah.
Because the aerial doesn't look super cleared, I guess.
Yeah, it's patchy in some areas.
It's kind of grown back in.
Yeah.
Well, they did start some site prep work.
To keep the permit going or something?
Yeah, I think they stubbed in the
Driveway.
driveway before the bike path was built, but it's been a few years since. I don't have any landscaping details right now, but I mean, if the commission would like some, we can provide it.
Yeah, 'cause
Or,
I'd love to see this.
or, I don't know, if he'd be willing to entertain closing and condition a landscaping plan prior to start of work.
Or could we condition? Could we condition, well, they probably, do you think they would have a problem with not having any lawn, inside the 25?
Well, there's no work in the 25.
Well, I know, but they've got sort of
Yeah,
this cleared area.
That like looks like it's gonna turn into
Oh.
lawn.
Would they consider letting this go back to?
Oh, yeah, no, certainly, yeah, if there was a, sorry, that
That's okay.
didn't want to work. Yeah, I mean, if that would, we can certainly revegetate that area. There's a lot of, poison ivy around.
Yeah, it's not the most.
I mean, and that area could have filled in, I'm not exactly
Yeah,
sure, but
exactly.
certainly we could add some plantings just to confirm that, and, if the commission wants, markers or something like that.
I think that area has, I'd ride by there a lot, and actually I've kind of wandered around back there looking for spotted knapweed, and I did dig a few plants out of there. I hope nobody
Oh, yeah.
minds, yeah. They're very sparse in there, but there were a couple back in there. Yeah.
And then I guess the other concern was just related to the questions for the dry well, and I feel like that is pretty important to have some detailed understanding about, because in the last permit that was denied for the septic, the gray water separation system was basically denied because of concerns about punching through that clay layer, and I know it seems like just a small area, 4-foot diameter hole, but still, not understanding what kind of an impact that's going to have, I don't think it should necessarily just be shrugged off. And so I guess the Commissioner Steinhauer's question about the construction of the dry well, I'm not really familiar with them either. On the detail here, it makes it look kind of like a perforated pipe, so I don't know if that is sort of allowing surrounding water down into in addition to the drains from the house, or if it is really only allowing intake from the house drains. But I guess my concern would be that, and maybe these were already permitted as is in the previous permit, that's another question, but if not, and then this is just incorporating additional holes down through the clay layer. That was initially the commission's big concern in denying that septic last time. And because of groundwater flowing sort of potentially from the wetland
Yeah.
area towards the road, there was concern about the impact. So again, I'm not a hydrologist either, so I don't really know what that size of a hole through the clay layer would do, but I don't think that it's something that should just be shrugged off because we don't really understand what impact it will have. So I just wanted to bring that up again and try to find out, maybe Jeff knows if these were previously permitted as they're detailed on this plan here.
Well, I will honestly say I don't know, because the other plan didn't provide a detail for what they were going to look like. So that I am not sure of. I wish I had an answer.
I think we would have had the same question as with the dry wells as we did with the septic, though, of going down through that layer and, you know, somehow sealing it off or however it would work. And
Yeah.
So, could this be, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but could this be done with a solid pipe instead of a perforated pipe? Would that solve the?
I wonder if it would be solid at the top, and then, you know, once it got into the sand, it could be perforated, but anything above the sand layer should be solid. Or something, I don't know. And
Right, well, this,
Or infiltration into a rain garden. I just don't know
Yeah.
if there are other alternatives that would avoid that, since it was the main concern in the past for this site.
right, this is not really something that's this is not necessarily trying to get the water down to the 12 feet. It's trying to perk all the way down. I mean, this is obviously what he's thinking. I mean, this would be a great foundation, example of filling in the foundation interior. One of those solid fills, this would probably be a great place for that, but,
Yeah, I mean, I think the
probably-
thought behind the detail is just to get the
yeah.
the roof water away.
And he's probably trying to put some mechanicals in the crawl space.
Yeah.
So that's why he wants something down there.
Well, yeah,
I mean, I think,
I guess I just have another
ahead.
question, not about the drywall though.
Yeah.
So if we're still on that.
oh, go ahead, whatever you want.
What, are these steps from a deck, or what is the detail coming off of the house there?
yeah. I guess there's doors on either side of it.
Okay, because it's just right there on the 50, so if
Yeah.
we're,
A little bit of driveway here.
yeah. But as far as like decking to step down, is that connected to the house and hard structure?
Depends on the house. I mean, it would be it would be I don't know, whatever they want.
I don't know
know.
specifically.
Probably
I
not.
assume it's probably be like a concrete or a granite slab.
I think it would just be, yeah. Other questions?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. Questions from the public? Any more questions from the public on this one? Okay. It sounds like we have some
Yeah.
concerns with the dry well.
Do you want to provide? We can provide some.
Yeah, that would probably be good, because then the concerns I guess we're having is the punching through and,
Yeah.
potential problems with the perch water table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, no, absolutely. For this, we can, I mean, it's planting the 25 foot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously no issues with the waiver, but, yeah, no, I think we could, not knowing exactly what that looks like, you could just be filled in as needed, something like
I
that.
think it might revegetate.
Yep,
Mhm.
okay.
Okay. So we'll continue 2 more weeks?
Sounds good.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Cliff Delaney Trust, 64 Cliff Road.
Ryan Maxwell with Bracken Engineering. We're looking to amend this order of conditions. We've added a well and a sewer connection. And we're also looking to reorientate the house back to a previously approved orientation. So a larger house was previously approved in the first notice of intent in this orientation on the lot. Then we received this new building layout,
Yeah.
and it was rotated to be more parallel with Delaney Road. Now we're looking to keep the same house footprint, but go back to the old rotation.
So this is the older or new?
This is the new. This is what
Okay.
we want. Yep.
Colorful lines. So we've got this, 25, no, 10, 25. 25. For the pool. For the pool.
This pool's
Okay. Is the pool already there?
No, I
No.
don't believe so. But it was
Approved?
previously approved.
Inside the 50.
Approved outside of 50.
because the pool fence, it looks like is going
Oh, these,
inside the 25, right? That's what I'm seeing.
yeah, but this
Yeah,
one
it
goes
was right
right
on
to these lines,
25.
right?
This is very.
Jeff, do you have any
So
thoughts on this one?
approved plan.
Yes, I do. I just want to make sure
Is
I
that
get
on
the
this
right
one?
one for you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Is there a scale on there? I see that plan.
So if you guys remember, extension,
So like a road or something
Sorry.
like that?
this is the one where we did all the filings kind of all at once. Alright, so this is the last one we did the minor modification. So. You guys remember, sorry, there's only one. Not to step in his way. So if you guys remember, we had approved the pool and the pool fence in this location. So here is your 100. This line here is your 50, and then it's just outside of 25. This is the project that had the 15-foot buffer from the wetland edge. This is another one that was a removal of the asphalt driveway down
Oh,
the road.
yeah.
That
That
ran
was the
right
3,
past
4
it.
houses that went in.
Yep, it
that
was 4
property.
houses
Okay,
together,
gotcha,
so
gotcha,
there's the house here,
gotcha. Oh, yeah.
second, third, and then there was an existing
I
house in the
remember.
back that was replaced with the new
Yep.
one. Was I still-
Don't think you were here for that one. Yeah, that was the, and it had the entrance way into that driveway. So, okay. And then there's this little, and this is like a little, there's a privet hedge here, and there's like another nice lawn over here. So this
Yeah, this wetland is
actually
like a little,
is a drainage.
I would say it's probably about 6 feet wide.
6 feet wide.
Just
And it
in
runs right
between
along the property
properties.
line, and then opens up in the back of the property.
Yeah, the wetland goes down. and
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
back. But that's
Got
what
it.
was approved.
Okay. Got it.
So the fence was outside the 25 on that plan, and the pool.
Well, yes and no. So, the original house and the one that's there now was the previously approved structure, and then they modified it to turn it,
Yeah.
and then you can see the pool was in here,
And now
and
it
then
is.
the fence was different and went through.
Yeah.
'Cause they modified it to change it, but then they built it to their original approval.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to everybody.
So this is all in like this now.
Let me see if I can get the original plan. Yes. Well, it's under construction.
Because normally I'm a pretty big stickler about keeping that pool fence out of the
Yeah, well.
25.
As far as opposed to
Yeah.
the pool itself, yeah. You went on the board back then, yeah.
I feel like I may have been.
Don't remember.
And this is a wetland, not a isolated vegetative wetland.
Right, it was more like a little drainage swell from the main road
Oh, it's that little, oh,
through
it's
along the
that-
privet line.
it's that one.
Yep,
Wow.
that one, yeah.
Oh, that's why we approved it, because of.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I forgot what
Now
the heck we were
now
thinking.
This was the
remember.
proposed structure of the pool with the fence.
Yeah.
The 25.
Essentially gone.
The most pathetic wetland you've ever seen in your life.
Square away.
Yeah, and only due to the town not managing road runoff probably.
Well, given that whole thing,
Yep. Driveway's there. rotation?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think they
Okay.
started on pool yet.
and the fence is probably just a 4-foot high something.
Yeah.
Pool fence. Yeah. Retention infiltration. I say this is a pretty developed area. This isn't exactly wild. Can you visualize what this is? It's all right on the-
Yeah, I pulled up the.
Oh yeah, it's not. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it doesn't. Because you got perfect lawn across the street.
I mean, it just looks like this whole thing, it's the same impacts on the side, it's just rotated.
Right.
20.
Yeah, I don't mind the rotation. I
If
think the
that's all
question
it
is that
then I don't see any
actually this is the fence.
additional issues with
And
it.
do we have a waiver for that currently? Because that's where it's gonna be
I
structured.
assume there was a
We
waiver
must
for
have given
everything
them a waiver.
beside
Yeah,
it.
there's lots of waivers.
Yeah, I think I think the decision was based on the nature of the wetland and the nature of the neighborhood and
Right. I think we're also looking at the whole series site, the whole lot.
yeah.
the whole series. Well, I mean, we kind of went through them all, but I mean, 'cause there are individual lots now.
Well, again, I don't think the amendment is increasing impact.
Me neither. Lots. No. Okay.
That's my thought as well.
You have any-
I mean, I guess as long as it's waivered properly.
Yes.
Jeff says yes. Okay.
And are they still mowing right up to the wetland? It's an existing hedge
I
then?
think they extended it for, well,
No, there's a 15-foot vegetative
Right.
buffer between the wetland and where they're working.
right. You have a recommendation on this
It's an amended order of conditions. Typically don't have recommendations for these. This is one
Okay.
you guys have to decide.
one? I don't know.
I'll recommend for minor mods and search.
Yeah, okay.
For the real decisions, I leave it to you.
I would move to close, move to issue the amended order of conditions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, that one passes with Commissioner Ericksman opposed. Thank you. Okay. The minor mods, public meeting, minor modifications. Kimball Sherburne, LLC, 9 Kimball Ave.
For the record, Paul Santos representing the applicant Kimball Sherburne LLC. This is a minor modification for a project approved at 9 Kimball Avenue, in which we're just simply inserting into the Conservation Commission file a more detailed site plan than was originally submitted under the notice of intent. The plan that you have in your packet depicts what was approved in red. Specifically, it has to do with the building size, essentially, and also shows in black what we've proposed. And actually, what we're proposing, or what we're amending to, is actually less of an impact than what was originally approved. Along the back side of the structure, we're eliminating what was a bay window. We're eliminating window wells along the back side. We're eliminating another window well here, and the covered porch and stone terrace is actually getting smaller along the back side. So completely within the 25 to 50, all the improvements are actually less impactful than what was originally approved. Along the front of the structure, between the 25 and 50, stairwell is smaller, building is smaller. We've eliminated a window, we've modified a window well in this area, and the building is actually smaller or well-defined in the front. The only additional
thing we've done in this area is there's 2 window wells along that side of the building. So for the most part, it's simply, yeah, that's a window well right there. It's essentially less restrictive within the approved area. We're just looking to submit this, append this into the file and do it as a minor mod. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Was there a sewer issue on this one too? You're going,
This is on-site septic. It's all outside the 100. It is
notation.
it is serviced by town water.
Right. Cool. Any discussion? Questions? Okay. Jeff, do you have a recommendation for this one?
Yeah, I recommend this could get approved as a minor modification.
Okay.
Move the issue of minor mod.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Passes unanimously. Murphy and Foundler, 9 Mass Ave.
Sure, so this is one, sorry, I'm going to hop in for this one.
Sure.
This was one that we had originally permitted the installation of an IA septic system on Mass Ave, and since then the tight tank district and things have gone through. And in place of the septic tank that was getting replaced and the IA system, they would just like to switch that to the tight tank instead of the IA system. So this is across the bridge.
Yep.
This is down towards Jackson Point. It's what we've been trying to push on Mass Ave. So.
Yeah.
So I would recommend this could also get approved as a modification to the previously approved plan.
And I don't think I'm in a butter on this, so
I will tell you, you were not, Ernie.
I don't remember it so great. Okay.
This is on the other end of Mass Ave.
Oh,
This
way
is
up
on
there.
the Jackson
Oh.
Point end.
Okay.
So I move to approve the minor mod.
All in favor?
Sorry.
Passes unanimously.
Get away from me there.
Good. Okay. Fayette Street Partners LLC, 13 Fayette Street.
Which Fayette did we say, 13?
Yeah. There's a couple here.
You guys had to get all tricky and apply for the all at the same
I know,
time.
we got lots of
I know.
partners on this one. Tons of partners.
So, Ryan Maxwell with Bracken Engineering. You're gonna see all of these lots.
They all look the same.
Yeah. You need to see them. So we now have a more final landscape design for these properties. So on this one in particular, we are let's see, we revised the patio. We changed the shape of the patio. The parking area on the driveway went from gravel to cobblestone. We're adding an underground propane tank, and we've also added fencing around the exterior of the property.
How will the cobblestone be set?
I don't know for sure. I would think dry laid, but I'm not positive on that.
This is all coastal storm
This is
flowage,
coastal
right?
storm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would that be as pervious if it was dry laid? Probably.
I would think so. I mean,
Probably, maybe even
I'm sure
more.
it's all dry laid.
More, yeah,
Probably.
because it's got all that space in it to hold
Yeah.
water for at least for a bit.
Yeah.
I would have left for permeable. So this house is under construction.
Yep.
Is it? So does it have the openings in the foundation as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we got that gain on that.
It sounds reasonable to me.
That's pretty good to me too. Any questions? Any questions? Okay.
They moved to issue the minor mod.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Any recommendations, Jeff? No.
At the moment.
Okay. Fayette Street Partners 2 LLC, 11 Fayette Street.
there and get to see the same kind of changes. Footprints
Three.
that are up.
Same-o.
My gosh, all the same.
If they're all the same, then
Well,
let's not
Yeah,
get through
different
them.
lots, different properties. So.
Yeah, that's all. Adding a propane tank, adding fencing. This one, the porch changed, got a little bigger, and the steps now come down this way. Before it was a stoop with steps.
Yeah.
A lot of minor things. The patio, I believe the patio changed shape.
Teeny spot.
Yeah. Added a propane tank, I think it said that.
Yeah.
A lot of the same.
This might be a stupid question. Will board fence impact flowage?
It's a board fence, not split rail.
Split rail. What kind of fence?
I believe it is a board
Yeah, it
fence.
says a board fence.
Interesting.
Have to be elevated, wouldn't it?
Solid.
Which would kind of take away the purpose of a board fence.
Yeah.
Well, the other ones in the area are usually separated from the ground. They don't sit
Yeah.
directly on it.
Right.
Yeah. They rot.
Well, we can take care of it.
Yeah.
Well, we can condition a gap under this one. Do we have a gap under it? Off the ground?
I suppose we could put on the
6
minor mod
inches
that
or-
all board fences are to be
Yeah.
elevated
Like at
from
least a foot off the ground.
They're not uncommon in this area, I will say.
No, for sure. An interesting point that's never really come up in discussion,
Right.
though, but it's a good point. When we're talking flow through these tighter neighborhoods. Okay, cool.
Okay. Motion to issue with the condition that the board fence be tilted off the ground. What's that? What's normal?
Don't usually do 6 inches would be easy. I mean, if you're talking a long fence, 6 inches doesn't, it's pretty, it's the grass growth and everything, 4 to 6 inches.
Let the rabbits get through.
Yeah. Exactly. Test rabbit can get there. Okay, you have a second on that one?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. That one passes unanimously. Union Street Partners LLC, 42B, Union Street.
This one's a bit new because this is a big plan because this original order also included the demo of all of the other buildings. That's why it's showing everything.
Yep.
But now the focus is on an individual lot. And it's the same. So
Yeah, all of these are relatively
All
the
the
same.
same,
Just
yeah.
refining the landscape plans and final shapes of patios and.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Well, if they're all the same, then move to issue.
You have a second?
Second.
Same stipulations if there's fencing.
Yeah, this looks like it has a board fence as well.
Yeah. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. And the last one, Union Street Partner 2 LLC, is 42A. Same.
it's the same thing.
It's the same.
Move to issue with the board fence condition.
No imagination anymore.
Is there a second? Second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. That one passes unanimously. Okay, so 3-2.
Hey, there's something we haven't really contemplated.
Well, look,
The board
the
fence.
HDC doesn't like.
No, but it's an
always
interesting point.
Like let those on plans, so we don't see them all that often. Even though they're in that area,
Yeah.
we don't see them proposed on plans.
Keep the flow down there, getting pretty dense.
Ladybird LLC, 8 Middle Valley Road.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, in front of you tonight to request a minor modification to allow for the placement of a septic tank within the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone. All of the work on this particular project is outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. There was a conservation restriction and a split rail fence. And really, this position for the tank is what allows for gravity flow best from all of the structures. And ultimately, this is a property that is going to be connected to town sewer. And you can see that we're actually allowing for a future pipe down near the road. So when the town gets the sewer out there, the septic system will be abandoned. The septic is outside of the 100, but that's the really the extent of the application. So I've highlighted. I know I used pink too much. The 50 and the 100 are in pink, but then so is the proposed work. And what I highlighted was the subsurface concrete tank and the piping. And again, it's all sealed and waterproof. And
Yep.
just trying to
And the field.
cross the T's.
Yep.
The leach field's out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's out by the road. It probably, I had to eyeball it, I would say even 200 feet from the wetland. Just the tankage, because again, for gravity from all of the structures, that's the spot that we can kind of make work.
Oh, that makes sense. It's, I would, unless there's other questions, I would move to issue the minor mod.
Any other questions? No? Okay, do we have a second? All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Okay. Certificates of compliance. For Saratoga LLC, 14 Tennessee Ave.
So 14 Tennessee Ave, this was for the redevelopment of the property. This was actually one that we carried over for a while, and everything was in compliance with the exception of a wire fence that had been run through the bushes. That fence has since been taken down. It's no longer there, so the site currently is in compliance.
Okay. So I'll make a motion.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. That one passes unanimously. Chicolta.
Check out that number, I see 4196. So this was also for the construction of a house, and those appurtenances, and it's also a site that's in substantial compliance. It's very old. Very old permit.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. Almanac Farm Nominee Trust, 25 Almanac Pond Road.
Sure, this was for the replacement of a septic system out on it's now the Almanac Arts Colony property. It's out there with the big barn, there's a bocce tournament there every year. It's in. The Board of Health has signed off on it. They just need to close out their permit from us for that, but it's also in compliance.
Move to issue the certificate of compliance.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Holbert Acquisitions LLC, 43 Holbert Ave.
Sorry. Also this one. Just want to make sure I remember. This one was for. So this one was for. This is also a kind of a site redevelopment project. But it was for the demolition of a dwelling and then the construction of a new dwelling with porches and grading and landscaping in the flood zone. Based on our site inspection and then the elevations provided on the final as-built plan, some information that we got from the guys at Bracken after the fact, that site is also in compliance with the ongoing conditions.
Okay. You have a motion? Or second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Quidnet Properties LLC, 84 Quidnet Road.
84 Quidnet Road was another septic replacement. That has also been done and in compliance. Anything ongoing on that one as well?
Okay. Motion on that one?
Sure.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
If it's just easy, we can do the next two together.
Excellent. Carroll 19, Winoma Way.
Because I don't remember which order was which. One of the orders was for the construction of a set of stairs down the coastal bank. and the other one was for the construction of a second floor balcony above the first floor deck. So it's just a, kind of door off the backside
Yep.
and it sits above the existing deck. Both of them are in, both of them match their permitted plans, and there were no ongoing conditions for either one.
Okay.
Move to issue both 19 Home Away certificates.
Do a second? All those in favor? Aye. That one passes unanimously. Orders of conditions. We didn't do Westchester. Did we close Lewis though?
Yeah, we closed that last time. That was the pool.
The pool, okay.
Well, that was a funky pool.
So,
Oh, the Westchester. we
The Westchester, right, the pool.
sorry.
That's right. That was me.
So we didn't.
Got it.
Yep, my draft orders. All right, so I tried my best to encapsulate the comments from last time on that one. So the ones that were specific is condition 21, that the pool shall only be discharged to a pump truck and removed from the site for disposal. A yearly report shall be filed of maintenance activities that require the lowering of the water level of the pool, with a record showing the volume drained by the pump truck. We're just trying to find a way to make sure that we got something that verified everything that went on. And then 2, just because it came up and I wanted to keep it in there, that the backwashing of any of the pool filters is prohibited. That's the way they were going to use the cartridge filters to avoid having to backwash. To keep that there. And then the last one that we had was a condition to hopefully help with any of the worries of fall and spring, that no chemical treatments are allowed between November 1st and May 1st. So on May 1st, they can go out there and treat their pool for the first time, and then their last treatment has to be before November 1st. So we'll sit completely untreated from the first day of November to the first day of May. So in January.
In other words, there's just fresh water in the winter.
Yes. And more importantly, I guess, probably in the spring.
In spring, yeah, whenever it's going to be overflowing.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Was that a move? Was that a move to
Yeah,
issue?
move to issue is drafted.
Okay. A second?
Yes.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I am opposed to this one.
No problem. Okay, that one passes with Commissioner Erickson opposed.
I usually do.
So I don't often check.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay. LaRusso, 316 Polk.
That one was not close.
That was not, sorry.
Sometimes we get wishful thinking. That
I
we
know.
deliberate
I just,
against.
know which ones.
Next one we're on is actually number 4.
It's a 53
Okay.
Walsh.
Stephen L. Cohen, trustee, 53 Walsh Street.
Yes, that was the one that was for the small additions, the 3 or 4 additions to
Right.
the existing structure and the
That
flood
was,
zone. Don't have any conditions for that. We're open to any suggestions. It seemed pretty benign.
Seemed pretty benign.
It's like a
Standard stuff.
chimney, yeah.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
Issue is drafted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That one passes unanimously. BGWFT2 LLC. Did we close that one? We closed that one.
That was the one we heard tonight for the addition at 16 Brent Point Road on the existing structure, the addition that was on the very front.
Oh, the one,
Down at Brent
yeah,
Point
where
Road.
it floods all the time.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't really have any conditions for that.
That was Ryan from that.
Yes, it was from Bracken.
Yeah. Someone like to make a motion?
Move to issue is drafted.
Do we have a second?
Should we just put,
Oh.
in here, we were asking about the crawl space having vents.
Yeah.
And the vents in the house. Is there, should we put that in there? to make
I
sure
think he has to by
Just
code.
has to.
They have to by code.
It did
That's coded, yeah.
as them.
Right. And
The
It was
main
unclear.
house does already, or will, or something.
It's more, I'll be honest, that's more of a building code issue.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not our gig.
Gotta assume it.
right.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. So the motion was to approve, to issue, to approve.
draft. Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? No, that one passes unanimously. Wait, 47A West Chester Street.
It was amazing that both of these pools that were very similar kind of came up at the same time.
Yes.
With it's there, so their order really reads very similar to the last one, and I just wasn't. I left off the condition about no chemicals between November and May because we hadn't talked about it for there, but I don't think that's really a bad condition.
No, I think it's a good, anything that's in close.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice one.
Other than that, it would read just like 96 Westchester.
Ben, didn't you suggest having better silt fencing?
Yeah, so this was the one that, Brian brought in, right, where we, was going through the south side of the house to access the pool for construction, and back at the corner of his front house. The only thing that I thought of, right, was increase the, silt fence and the hay bales or.
So we'd have a
additional erosion control.
we'd have a 24 that, yeah, so 24 that hay bales shall be added to the silt fence along the limit of work. Sure.
We also talking about silt sock.
Silt sock, yes.
And or
Yeah, what is?
Why don't we could put hay bales or equivalent
Sure.
to be added to the existing silt fence to get the limit of work?
What's better? What's that?
Tubes.
Whatever's better.
It is
It
highway
really
tubes.
depends. I mean,
It's funny, I actually had a conversation with someone earlier this week that I was gonna talk about in my administrator report about silt fencing. So we can have that now if we want to deal with this order while it's getting signed, or we can wait a few minutes and have that conversation with you guys. Because it's something that, all I'll tell you is, we're speaking with Ken Panish that came in and was talking about some of the projects he's working on. And one of the things he's encountered is as they install and maintain silt fence, that proper silt fence is towed into the ground. And as silt or things accumulate, sometimes they get further in, but then they have to go in to remove it, and they end up having to tear it out. And he was concerned about the damage being done to do it. Not only that, but also through some of these areas that are along the buffer zones and defining the limit of work, depending on what the vegetation looks like, going back in and having to manually remove it. And his question that he asked me that I was trying to answer was, in some situations, is it better to be using hay bales or wattles or a silt sock or something that's not the traditional, 18-inch high black woven fence?
Petroleum product.
And it would it be better for us to permit what that's going to be at the limit of work with more flexibility to be more sensitive to the site? And his example was, for going in to do restoration work, to him it made more sense to use kind of the wattles, because of worst case scenario, if they can't get in or needs to be cut and removed, you're just putting some straw into the system and it's going away. Or they even have ones that degrade pretty quickly now where it's there. Is that a better choice than the black silt fencing? And my personal thought is it probably is if you're taking the time to think about it. But we've kind of always just blanketed it as silt fence, and that's what it is. That this may also be a case where we're looking at adding the silt sock to the fence, that maybe this is a better site to do something different to protect the wetland that will provide the same level of protection without necessarily the potential for any impact. So
I just don't know that as it degrades, it loses its ability to go to catch. But I hear what Ken's saying. I know it's like that stuff gets so it does its job. It's silted in. Pick it out and do more damage.
yeah. I mean, he was pretty honest that there have been some spots where they would rather just go through, instead of trying to rip it out, they just cut it at the surface with a razor blade, and they leave the 8 inches that's in the ground there, because they'd be doing a little excavation to get it all out. And I'm not sure that that's serving our interests. And he said, I know it's not the best thing to do, but I'm weighing out removing 6 or 8 inches of soil, hauling it out and tearing out whatever's attached to it, or if roots grow through it or something happens, or he thinks there are better alternatives, I guess, and I don't think that's an uncommon view.
Well, I think that in the case where we had both, sensitive site, you had both, you might not get the silting in the fence as much.
Right.
And it would come out easier. So I think the silt sock first and then the fence.
Behind.
As a, kind of catch-all.
Yeah, because if there's that much siltation, they should almost be doing maintenance of that throughout the project rather than waiting till the end in some ways.
Well,
It's like keeping your silt fence up.
well, the trick of it too is proper silt fence is also installed with part of it being buried.
Right.
So that complicates it a bit too. So there's some food for thought, I guess.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess you have to look at the availability of hay bales for all these
Some kind of
projects.
biodegradable thing would be, nice, really.
I mean, the tubes make those tubes are nice. They can
Are
be
those
rolled.
available
Yeah.
locally?
I've seen them.
I've seen both on job sites here. So.
Highway departments will love them.
All right, so we're still in the order of conditions
Okay.
for this one. Sorry.
So, I mean,
So we added the no treatments, and then the hay bales are equivalent to supplement the existing silt fencing.
okay, so 23 no treatment, 24 is hay bale. Okay.
Do we need to restate anything about the vegetation going in, or is that covered under the previous?
That's covered under the previous. They're not presenting
Right.
any changes to that.
That's it. Any other thoughts? Do we have a motion? You want to make a motion?
Yep, motion issue the,
Addition of 23 and 24, the,
what amended order of conditions.
Second?
all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Other business. Approval of minutes. Well, unless anyone has no objections, approved by unanimous consent. Enforcement actions.
All right, real quick before Brian comes up, this way I can make Kevin stay longer too. Real quick update on the Brock's Court one that we issued last time. Not the. I got so confused. The now current one Brock's Court, but not the one Brock's Court that's on our agenda. The old one Brock's Court, because now this one is 3. It's very confusing. The pipe that was discharging has been removed, so that work was done. We got a very angry call from Switzerland from the homeowner about that one. So, but it's been removed, but it's definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on. So no real other updates there. Other than that, Brian Madden is here tonight to talk about the enforcement that we issued at 36 Pocomo. They've kind of done the initial surveying, and just to give more of an update to that, they also have filed a notice of intent on Friday to do the restoration of a pretty substantial area of cutting, I would call it, and work that was done.
Excuse me.
Some of this is just to kind of get the ball rolling and say this is where we're headed. Is this the direction you would like? Is there work that you would like us to try to get done this year before the winter hits as far as planting goes or things? This is to kind of get started. I know the abutters are here too because they've had some concerns, so I said they would be able to make a few comments now in regards to this so they also can contribute that we're going in the right direction as far as fixing this area goes. And then we'll be, as part of our regularly scheduled public hearings on the 19th, this will open for actual notice of intent, public comments, questions, and those things. But I think this was just to hopefully give us an update because I think it took us a little longer than anticipated to get from enforcement to here, and I think part of that was just related to the fact that the work that was done and the amount of delineation that needed to be done was more extensive than what I was projecting from issuing the enforcement. Now, to make it sound as grim as possible, I'll turn it over to Brian. We'll go from there.
Get all the good ones.
So, Brian Madden from LEC, representing the applicant, property owner. We were retained in early August to basically establish the wetland boundaries out here and then develop the restoration plan based on the extent of the clearing and existing conditions in relation to the resource areas. So once we were able to get the line established, get a survey located, and get all the paperwork together for the notice of intent we filed last Friday. The client has also retained Ken Panasek to do the restoration work. So I've gotten some initial feedback from Ken on some of the planting sequencing and approach. But essentially the restoration footprint is about 23,574 square feet.
Holy cow.
Like a half
So, just to kind of walk you through it to begin with, you're familiar with the property next door, 40 Pocomo, that had the ILSF pool habitat. There wasn't any encroachment into the ILSF or the vernal pool habitat. And I established the mean annual high water flags based on MAC and extent of standing water, basically. Depicted that on the plan. Established the upgraded boundaries. That's the A-series wetland on the far west side of the property. In the interior, there was an isolated vegetated wetland that was cleared. Basically what happened here was that the area was cleared of vegetation and grubbed, but the topsoil wasn't scraped off, so that's still present. And there's, across the property, there's some scattered piles of the woody debris that have been left on the property. So we're proposing to take that out and properly remove them off-site or outside the buffer zone areas. The disturbed wetland area itself, the isolated vegetated wetland and B-series wetland, we're going to reestablish a wetland seed mix there. There's another area on the east side of the property that basically the 25-foot buffer zone was disturbed. Some lawn was created. We're proposing to restore that area. And then secondly, on the west side of the property, there's a fourth isolated wetland, basically. So we're proposing to restore all wetland areas, all 25-foot buffer zones, 50 feet within of the vernal pool habitat, ILSF, and then additionally portions of the 25 to 50 foot to bring it back into compliance, in excessive compliance of the 50% alteration between the 25 and 50 foot. So I think it's somewhere around like upwards of 60% proposed. One thing I just kind of wanted to review, so we have the cross-hatched area, and what we're working on currently now that I wanted to bounce some ideas off the commission. We're proposing to submit a more formal planting plan that kind of looks like this. It shows specific plant types, locations, sizes, etc., and just gives a better quantification. So it's basically going to be broken up into two areas. And we'll quantify the plants. Probably looking on the order of something like upwards of 200 shrubs and over 50 trees being proposed out here. So it's going to be a sizable restoration effort. One thing that Ken had brought up recently was for the B-series isolated wetland. Yes, he's a little hesitant about applying the seed mix this time of year. We're trying to rush to get everything going for this fall. and Ken just has some hesitation on stripping out what's there now, and then reseeding with the seed mix, and then having all that seed wash out in the winter. His plan or preference would be to do that seeding in the springtime and have a full growing season for it to establish. You want to jump in?
I mean, seeding can take up to 7 years for establishment with like major maintenance criteria for weeding.
Yep.
Is there any plugging involved with this?
I don't believe so. I think it would be all just sowing the seed by hand. You know, some level of parallel for 11 Wall in it, that restoration plan that for the driveway relocation. I don't know if you guys have probably driven by, but it's looking very good now. So kind of we've adapted some of those methods that were implemented out there into this. Ken did that as well. What was relayed to me was, and I think to Jeff as well, that his preference would be to do that work in the spring. But what we'd like to do this fall is at least plant the buffer zone to this area over here, the A series wetland. That's the one on 40 Pocket Hall. So we're not, basically it minimally encroaches into the wetland over there, and there's a lot of sensitive fern and cinnamon fern in the ground cover. So I don't feel that there's a need to do any seeding over there. We're just planting trees and shrubs in that area. So, you know, we like to, you know, show some progress moving forward here and get some work activity going this fall, but phase it as appropriate for the season and the recommendations by the restoration specialist.
So with that too, I mean, keep in mind that we're running kind of concurrent now, a notice. So you guys have the ability to order work to begin and get started in certain areas and not have to necessarily worry about monitoring or those conditions at the end, because that's something that you could include in an order of conditions at the end. And if you wanted to get started on work, you could order specific items to be done, and then you could even anticipate getting an update kind of as the notice of intent progress goes on what's happening. Obviously, this will probably be a site that's added to our regular field viewings in front of the notice of intent 2 weeks from Monday. So, not this past Monday, so the 17th of October. We'll be on site for this one. We usually go to these. So, it's up to you. You may also want to, you know, hear if the abutters who are impacted by this have any comments now or thoughts on the sequencing or what's happening. Or if not, they can also, you know, wait till the regular public hearing. And if you guys want to say, get started on that, you have the ability to order that work to be done.
In my thought, presenting informally today was trying to jumpstart this, hopefully to get an order on the 19th and then jump right into some level of work.
Okay.
Something that maybe could be cleared up.
Yep.
The edge of existing lawn is in reality edge of the unapproved clearing.
Yep.
Just so that's memorialized that that wasn't approved work. It wasn't existing before. You know, I just think.
Right, but it's not, I mean, unless you got the right house.
Right. This is. The
Oh,
house.
okay, that's it.
You got a picture?
Okay.
Because this is the house next door where they cleared all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
back area. So here's wetland A
Right.
or whatever. And wetland B would be up like behind these trees almost.
Yeah. Well, in that aerial, they hadn't cleared it.
Right, they haven't cleared it
So
yet. So
it's
you can
not
see that the
historically cleared,
lawn
yeah.
isn't
Yeah,
right
Right.
here.
More equivalent.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So this whole, it's actually,
Right, to kind of delineate
Yeah.
that better.
Yeah,
That'd be
the edge
great.
of clearing of the lawn, just because that separated out what exactly we're doing. Because lawn areas that we're restoring in the upland, we're going to propose a fescue mix to reseed that area and let it become naturalized. There is one area where they, well, actually a couple areas that where there was created lawn, they did put in irrigation. We're going to take that out. And the NOI goes through the typical monitoring protocol and program for that in any invasive species management as necessary.
In terms of density of plantings, I mean, I don't know if this stage
Yeah.
without seeing it, but 200 plants sounds like not enough.
I'd say minimum. We got to crunch the numbers a little bit more, and that's kind of the purpose of this planting plan, is to give it scale and size, and be able to confidently stand behind those numbers. The trees within the wetland areas, we're looking at red maples, space 10 to 15 on center. Shrubs, winterberry, high bush blueberry, sweet pepperbush, space 3 to 5 feet on center, I think. That's what it's spec'd out. In the uplands, we're proposing black oak and pignut hickory, which is also out here as well.
Brian, we're having an issue with that oak, sort of wasp?
Gall.
Gall wasp, yeah, I mean, and the black oaks are getting hammered in some places on the island, yeah, so.
Yeah, we initially contemplated some cedars, but Ken was saying that they've been hit pretty hard with deer browsing, so he prefer something like the black oak.
It was one way too.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, we can take a look at that. We can bounce some ideas off of him. And then for upland shrubs, looking at bayberry, arrowwood, and American hazelnut, similar spacing. I think Ken had mentioned for the hickory, he wanted to space those out a little bit more. But yeah, we'll give you more definitive numbers on it.
Because do we know if we lost cedars in here?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah. Because then we would want to mix some of those back in.
There were cedars next door.
Right.
Yeah, there's probably a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about some huckleberry in the upland? It's something that will, help fill it in.
Yeah.
A
And then
little bit
root
stuff.
mat will spread nicely.
Able to get that in the nursery?
I'm not sure.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I've had some different.
There's a nursery in like Western Mass.
New England wetland plants?
Yeah.
How about the understory? Is it going to be seeded with like a fescue mix or something? Or is it?
Yeah, the areas within the lawn, it could be a fescue mix.
Yeah.
And we're open to any suggestions on that end.
I'm just thinking about, like the plantings would be what, bare ground underneath.
Because you're going to,
Well-
you said there's sensitive fern, et cetera, already.
Yeah, within the A series wetland. The B series wetland's going to need to come up entirely.
Right, so that's why I think slugs or something.
So right now,
The wetland.
like this was the back area over here was reseeded as a meadow. It's a meadow mix. So-
Non-native.
Yep.
It's like the Grinch line now.
What sort of?
The Grinch.
Yeah,
I
avoid that
don't
like
think
the
it's
plague.
weak and low.
Is it not?
I can confirm that though.
You can get some pretty decent switchgrass these days, it seems like.
So the initial intent was maybe to keep that mix and just within the upland and plant the shrubs and trees down there.
Yeah.
But I'll confirm what this is exactly and modify as necessary. But it's established, and what's coming up now is there's a lot of sassafras around the area, so there's a lot of sassafras seedlings coming up, so it's going to start to fill in.
Yeah.
a lot of Virginia creeper, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a ton of size frames.
That'll spread out, and of course some tupelo would fill in places.
Yeah, I think,
That can probably be problematic if you're trying to maintain an edge.
yeah.
I'd agree with Ken though, it's, kind of wasting your time seeding this time of year. Maybe hydro seeding, well, maybe. But the pest weeds are slow to germinate, even in those conditions, so probably better wait till the spring.
Well, we're already into October, so if we want to get it started in the fall, it's probably a good thing to get started.
Yeah, my concern too is with there being land subject to flooding, if it's a wet winter and a potential vernal pool in the middle, to not create opportunities for excess silt leaving the site and getting into. It's a vernal pool. See the stuff out there. We'll just say it. It's a vernal pool. That to get excess silt and stuff into that vernal pool is, I think, something we would want to avoid. That being said, I also don't want to have it just linger forever and no progress to get made. So.
Good.
So where we at, Brian, this is an informational session?
Yeah.
Kind of looking for permission to start a little bit, or what?
No, just give me more information to prepare more information to formally submit. So kind of from the 19th, we're kind of ready to jump into it, or some level of work.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have comments from the abutter?
May I have a moment?
Absolutely.
Please, please.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Dale. I represent Bob Wright, who's the abutter at 2933 Dewey Creek Road. And as you know, we notified the commission of this illegal activity back in May. And first and foremost, I appreciate the efforts Brian Mann is making. He does great work, and he's sincere, and I was able to talk to him, and I like this plan. But I think the overriding fact is that these owners, although notified, ignored the situation for 3 months, didn't retain Brian until after they were told to file a replication plan here, and have been, in my view, disrespectful, negligent, and not good citizens with this commission. We knew very well what they did. I understand your point, Ben, about sequencing and maybe wanting to do things in the spring, but I think given the delay that the owners have caused here, it may be worth seeding now and risking that it will work rather than it won't work. I think there has to be an affirmative effort now, the month of October 2016, by these owners to replicate this lot and restore it to its prior condition. I don't think that it's fair or equitable to wait until the spring to do this work unless it simply can't be done in the fall. The risk that it might wash out, it may not wash out. The risk that silt may go into the vernal pool, it may not. Steps can be taken. Fundamentally, the owners don't want to do it now because it may cost them more. That's why. They want to buy plants in bulk. They want to wait till the spring so they don't have to do it again. And I don't think that should be a factor in any sense that this commission considers. I defer to you. If you think it's prudent to wait, fine. If there's an environmental reason, a botanical reason, natural reason to wait through the spring to do it, fine. But if there's not, and if there's a risk that everything might go well, if it's done now, it should be done now.
I think it's just really germination potential, and I'm understanding it's brought up by Ken, not necessarily the owner. It's just the guy that's going to be doing the work on the ground, which I would agree with him as far as just on an agronomic level. I think the planting can be done now.
Right, because it's just this wetland B that you would be doing the seeding that's delaying.
Yeah, if we're going to keep what the grass is out there now and just planting, yeah, we can jump into a more robust effort. But yeah, the delay in the seeding and kind of planting of that wetland that came directly from Ken, just based on his recommendation.
Yeah, I think it's just the recommendation is from the field guy doing work in the field. The planting certainly is a pretty good plan. I think that's certainly not trying to let him put there.
That wouldn't destabilize anything anyway, would it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you may lose
I
it.
think that if it would be helpful, this is an excellent opportunity through the enforcement process to say, we understand the seeding may be problematic and we'll deal with that as part of the notice, but as part of the enforcement, we would like you to start proceeding to get the material you need to complete all of your tree and shrub plantings, and we are ordering that to be completed and set a date. And then you could deal with the monitoring and fine tuning that through the notice, but you could at least say, we're anticipating that all the trees and the shrubs be in the ground by November 15th, or whatever it is, and then that's up for them to sort out. But I think you certainly have that ability. I don't want to put anyone in a really bad space, but
Seed, you know, maybe it will come up, maybe it won't. It's just, I just, you know, as far as a success basis, you might not be that successful. It'll have to be done again. But
If you if you put seed now, though, when would you normally start seeding, though? Usually
Best
before
time-
you ever saw anything, right?
Best
So it
time
would
to
be-
seed is like August 15th.
Oh.
You know, like when it's still,
Oh, so
ground's
the
still
end.
warm, but you don't have a lot of weed
We're quite a
competition.
ways past there.
I was about to
You
say,
know,
so
a lot
they
of
go
weed
through the whole
competition.
next summer without having to seed.
Right,
until
but
then.
you could also seed in the spring.
Yep.
It's just you're competing with weeds at that time. But
Yep.
Does it make
Okay.
sense to
That's where the
stabilize
heavy
the site
maintenance-
with like a degradable netting, like a hemp or
I gotta see it. I gotta see it.
Yeah.
I gotta see it.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably like spread straw or something like that.
or straw or something, yeah, just to,
I would also maybe and consider hydro seeding areas too, just to improve there's some holding capacity and germination potential increases too. So I guess I'm saying, Kevin, that I don't disagree with the guy in the field, and it certainly wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be harmful to see now. It just wouldn't be successful in practice again.
Well, I take your point, and I agree. I think Jeff's suggestion is a capital suggestion. Is to lay the seed perhaps in the spring, do all the other planning now,
yeah.
and have a date certain by which it has to be done. To let this person, this owner, know the commission's serious about these things. There's been too much time that's gone by, and the time is now to do it.
I think we're good on that, yeah.
I mean, it certainly doesn't preclude you, you know, if best efforts are being made and 95% of the plantings are in, and all of a sudden it's November 15th and they have 20 more plants to do, for them to pick up the phone and say, we have 20 more plants to do, we've gotten 250 in, can we have one more day? I don't think that's out of the question for you guys to extend it or deal with it, but I think it sets a little bit of the clock to say, you need to be there, and just tidying it up to get those things. So,
My biggest worry was getting through this process and then be in a position to order the plants and have them arrive in a timely fashion so they can be planted before season turns.
this is the good news of having the open enforcement, is you can say, well, that's what we're expecting. Place your order, get those plants sounded acceptable, and then they get on site, and you guys can fine tune what's gonna happen through the notice and order, but they can at least be ready to go and not be held up. It's not like you're waiting for a house to get built or something. This is fixing an enforcement issue.
So, yeah,
Thank
go
you
for
very
it.
much.
Thanks, Brian.
Also, just want to make one comment. If are you recording of the? Okay, just we don't have a problem with it. We just want everyone, if people are recording, to let us know. Perfect. No problem. No problem. So, where are we here now? Okay, so we're all set with that?
Yes.
No? Okay, good. Okay, reports. CPC?
Not here.
Not here. Good. NPDC? Nothing.
Skipping.
Mosquitoes?
We had our final meeting essentially of the year last week. And we're just trying to push the public education as to what our
board does, what the town does for mosquito control. Essentially try and educate that we're using a larvicide, and through this process and calling the town when you have a mosquito problem, hopefully we will cut down on pollinator deaths, etc., from just blanket spraying. So we're going to be working on that over the winter.
Okay, any other boards, commissions? Nope. Commissioner comments? Nothing. Excellent. Administrative staff reports? Nothing.
No, I'm very sure everyone can do things. Their iPads.
That's right. Do you have a motion? I guess we're all set.
Well, let's thank Joe for her new formatting
Yes.
on the.
Oh, yeah, very cool.
That's
I haven't played with it yet, but I saw it. Yeah, quick going. Very good.
Thank you, Terry.
And Terry's
Thank you for
always,
time
yeah.
spent. Okay, do we have a motion to close the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Favor? Aye.